And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, him.
Attention, roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern Time. Of course, it's your Friday roundtable with the Finest Unfiltered. I think you're going to love this episode. I know that watching the New York City Council hearings, it's I got to tell you right now, it's better than TV. You watch the New York City Council hearings with the NYPD, FDNY corrections, especially the NYPD. It's like, this is theater. You want to, if you're watching a good show, forget about it. Go to the City Council hearing. This thing is unbelievable. I'm telling you, you will be entertained. If you haven't watched any of it yet, if you watch some of it, but when you watch it and you give the actual perspective and start to break it down, you realize how humorous it is and how ridiculous it is. And it's wasted taxpayer money. These are the people we vote. I mean, these are the people that we expect to hold New York City accountable. It's laughable. Like, who's going to hold these people accountable? Excuse me. But before we jump into that, let's discuss Jeffrey Maddrey, former chief of department, who is at the focal point of numerous allegations, who's now firing back with his own lawsuit. Jeffrey Maddrey. Quite interesting. So, John, Marlon, good morning. Let's jump into that first, and then we'll go into the circus that surrounded the New York City Council hearings with the NYPD and Jessica Tish's responses. You're going to love this one. It's outstanding. So, John, good morning. Let's jump into Jeffrey Maddrey.
Yeah, what's up, gentlemen? What's up, everybody? Welcome, gestating parent and non-gestating parent. New York's focused on a lot of great bills right now, a lot of very important things. We got to take away the title mother and father from people. So to all you gestators and non-gestators, welcome. It's going to be an interesting Friday show, I think. We were going to name it Public Safety Theater because that's exactly what these city council hearings have proven to be. I honestly think at this point, I don't even know why we pay taxes because none of our money is going to good use. The people that are in charge of this it's laughable at this point. And their appointed officials, namely Jeffrey Maddrey, I saw an article coming out that he's suing New York City. He believes that New York City should represent him for lawsuits that are not involved with his official duties as an NYPD police officer or an NYPD chief. And I literally was like, the first thing I saw was the balls, the actual balls. And I was like, you know what? In my opinion, he's got a better shot, even though it's so ridiculous and taxpayers don't want it. He's got a better shot of getting the city to foot the bill for his legal bills than they will for what the wrong that they did to former NYPD Police Commissioner Tom Donlin, who also is now appealing the decision to throw out his lawsuit. That's another thing that's coming out. And again, there's not anything I think that Donlin wrote down there that's even stretch. Like, everyone knows what happened. I mean, we narrated what happened under Keechant Sewell, and then Tom Donlin, same exact thing. And then Tom Donlin basically came out and said, yeah, everything that those guys were saying is right. This is all the inside stuff from my point of view. And we saw it. We saw all the federal investigations. We saw all the corruption coming out of the Adams administration. And you got one guy who thinks taxpayers need to foot the bill for his actions and his personal problems. And, and then you got the other guy when New York City's like, no. You can't report corruption to the mayor. Absolutely ridiculous ruling. So, and I have no faith at all in New York's criminal justice system whatsoever. Morning, Mark.
Yo, morning chat. Morning, everyone. Morning, fellas. Happy Friday. That City Hall hearing is very interesting. We were talking backstage. I don't think we're gonna have enough time to cover it all, but we're gonna do follow-ups on it because there's a lot you should know from it. And I think we might be the only platform, as far as I know, that really ever talks about the city council hearings. But there's a lot of information that's said there that you dig through and you realize, and you really think about. It gives you a clear understanding of where things are going and how things operate in the city, and just the hearing itself tells you a lot about how things operate in the city, Excuse me. Because Excuse me. Um,
Were you and
because
Eric making out? You both got the same cough. It's weird.
no, I think it's because my throat is dry.
You
I
want to
didn't,
make
I
a
didn't
threesome?
take a sip.
You want to make a threesome?
Yeah. Yeah, no. So I was saying that the hearing itself tells you a lot about the way things work in the city because I've referred to it before as kayfabe. Because think of it, they all know what a lot of the problems are, right? They, both the NYPD and City Council get there, and we talk. They bring up these questions that don't get answered at at that hearing, but they really know what the answer is. They just don't know the specifics of those answers because again, when you ask Tish for it at the hearing, Tish tells them, "Oh, I'll tell you later," or "We'll get that information to you." I, I'm, I'm, I question whether they actually ever get that information, because a lot of those questions have been asked before, and those same responses were given by Tish before, or similar responses, by Tish and people who preceded her. So that hearing is important, but like Eric said, first we're gonna go into Jeffrey Madry's lawsuit, and boy, does that guy have balls, so
Yeah. Listen, spot on. There's no doubt about it that if you're Jeffrey Madry and you're at the focal point of such severe allegations, you think you would be satisfied or just happy and content with the fact that you retired into total bliss and that he actually wasn't disciplined and terminated. He retired into total bliss. Excuse me. There's no doubt about it. Now, let's talk about Jeffrey Madry's position. So, under Eric Adams as the mayor, Jeffrey Madry was the subject of nearly 4 civil lawsuits. And with those 4 civil lawsuits under Eric Adams, Jeffrey Madry was covered by corporation counsel, which means, excuse me, in layman's terms, just means that his defense was being funded by the city, that he was being indemnified, which means he's being supported. Now, in order to be indemnified, it has to be determined that you were acting within the scope of your employment. Now, to my knowledge, the allegations that are against him, I don't believe are in the scope of your employment. Does anyone believe that the allegations against Jeffrey Madry are within the scope of his employment? It's the most ridiculous thing. So, according to the article in the New York Post, that there was new evidence obtained that has changed that position and that he no longer qualifies for defense. But what we don't know is what is that new evidence. It goes on to say in the article that apparently Jeffrey Madry lied during the investigation. So we don't know what he lied about. They haven't told us. So, but yet he retired into total bliss. In my opinion, the only thing that changed is that Eric Adams was the mayor before, and now it's Zohran Mamdani. That is the only thing that has changed. But at the same token, it shows that the Eric Adams administration was never held accountable. We had numerous lawsuits, in my opinion, where Jeffrey Madry should not have been indemnified. Same thing for Timothy Pearson, and same thing for your former mayor, Eric Adams. No difference. The only difference is we know that we saw the appearance of impropriety and a corrupt administration. So now on the Zohran Mamdani, that has changed. I think the gall on this guy, I mean, you should just be happy, like, damn, I retired into total bliss. These allegations are pretty damning. And yet you fire back. It just shows you that the galls on these chiefs and former chiefs in the NYPD, they just, it appears they think they walk on water. John, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, imagine you retired into total bliss. You're lucky they even retired in that manner. And yet he's firing back with a lawsuit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little nuanced on it because I think like when we look at people being indemnified, when should a cop be indemnified? When they act within their training, in the scope of their employment, within the law, cops should be indemnified, meaning that any lawsuits that arise as a result of that, they should be covered. So now let's just say you're a supervisor in the New York City Police Department and, whatever the case is, you get accused of sexual harassment by someone you've never had a relationship with. There's no evidence that you've ever had a relationship with them. It's just, it appears to be a frivolous lawsuit on its face. There's an investigation done, and they're like, as a matter of fact, there is no like text messages between them. There was no messaging between these people. It appears that because of this person's position, they're being targeted for a lawsuit. Then I would be apt to support indemnification and the legal protection of an NYPD supervisor or cop, right? Because it could happen to anybody. However, when you have someone admitting to be in a consensual sexual relationship with someone while the other person's claiming that it's not consensual, that has absolutely nothing to do with department business. That is not something that needs to be indemnified. That is not something taxpayers need to pay. That is what's called your own personal problem. For years, I've interacted with women in the New York City Police Department, and I always had a saying. Guys would come up to me. They would see a girl coming over talking to me. Oh, what, you talking to her? I'm like, you see what that is? That's called a career ender, my friend. If you'd like to end your career, if you'd like to end your marriage, go right ahead. I will not be partaking in that. Thank you. So the same's true for women when it comes to men. I think, there's in any profession, you should separate getting your own jollies off from the profession that you're in. To me, it was more important to keep that job and to keep a paycheck and to put a roof over my head than to engage in relationship making in the NYPD. I just never partook in it. If I really needed, if I became single, I went out to clubs, I went out to bars, I met people through friends. I never had that problem. I get some people do, but it's just, to me, any lawsuits that arise out of that, taxpayers should not fund that whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. If it's related to your duties, absolutely. You're having a consensual relationship with someone and it goes bad, that's your own personal problem. Deal with it yourself. That's really my only thoughts on it. I have nothing else on that whatsoever. Like, foot your own bill, Jeff. Or as Corey would say, freaky Jeff.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And the specific rule the city is going under, I believe is they're using General Municipal Law 50K, which we've mentioned here before, which basically states that the city is going to represent you if the lawsuit falls within the scope of your employment. And we've talked about this before. I don't believe sexual harassment falls within the scope of your employment. You consider all the things that were all the allegations that circled Marjorie, paying for basically paying for sex, or doling out overtime for sex, overtime and favors. I don't think that falls within the scope of the duties of chief of department. I don't know. I'm just a idiot fired cop, right? But I don't know. It sounds to me that doesn't fall within the scope of the employment of the duties of chief of department, right? So they're saying in the article, which I just posted for you guys in the chat, that the city's lawyers have found no evidence. It should show up in the chat. Let me know if it doesn't. But I want to know what new evidence that is exactly, because it doesn't take a genius to figure this out, And but I think this is going to be an interesting case to follow, because I think it's actually going to, I don't know, maybe Marjorie's hoping that the city won't want stones to get turned up, for this, because we already know that the department wasn't being run like professionally, right? And we all know that they skirted certain rules and they exempted certain people from discipline. And I think if this goes to trial, or we get discovery, there might be a lot of things in there that's gonna really like bring this entire that entire administration. They're gonna put a giant spotlight on it and all the unprofessionalism that occurred there. So I wonder if he's hoping that the city isn't going to want to dig up those stones, and he's kind of holding a gun to their head right now, So
You know what? never ceases to amaze me. I'm not going to lie. I have a total bias towards lawyers and attorneys. I just particularly don't like them. Honestly, I have come across several in my life that are good, but I've come across some that have really disappointed me in that profession, where it's like, wow, some of these lawyers and some of these attorneys, honestly, to me, I'd say, man, these guys are worse than a perpetrator that'll rob you. Because those people, you know what? At least they rob you to your face. These guys will stab you right in the back. And the reason why I bring that up, I just think it's funny, right? Like, here's the city. They're like, all right, we're not flipping the bill for you anymore, Madry. And Madry's like, okay, I'll see you in court. And then we have an attorney who's actually like, hey, okay, I'll stand behind you. We'll let you sue back for this. Like, not only does Madry have balls, but the attorney representing Madry, he's got balls too. Like, you're not embarrassed. There's no shame in the game. Like, look at the allegations that your client is in. Your client, it's and exactly what you said, John. This happens all the time. Frivolous allegations, women who have fired back at men in positions of leadership because they didn't get things they wanted. That happens. We have frivolous cases just like that. And in those cases, yeah, you need to be protected. The job needs to support you. But Madry's case is far different. We have an admitted relationship. So we're far beyond the scope of employment. But there's an attorney who's like, hey, no problem. We'll take that case. The city's not going to flip the bill anymore. But at the same token, shame on no one speaking up and holding this whole thing accountable, because the city was flipping the bill for Madry for 2 years. For 2 years under Eric Adams' tenure, the city was flipping the bill for 2 years. So at the same token, he does have a lawsuit. That's the sad part about this. The total balls, the goals on this guy to actually fire back with a lawsuit. But at the same token, the city gave him that position to actually fire back with a lawsuit. For 2 years, they're flipping that bill. And then all of a sudden, at the 10th, in the 9th inning, they changed the game. So they actually gave him this lawsuit, which is a shame. He shouldn't be in this position to actually fire back. But at the same token, it shows you this is why we need to hold people accountable. And this is why I say every active chief in the NYPD is a disappointment. No one ever spoke up about it. No one said this is ridiculous that we're actually pushing this and throwing this to Corporation Council and funding his lawsuit. Unless, maybe, you know what, John and Marlon, maybe, you know what? Maybe the reason why they indemnify him, maybe when you're an active chief up in the NYPD, maybe having yourself a little harem, maybe that is the scope of their employment. Maybe that's what it is. When you make it to a certain point in the NYPD, that's the scope of your employment. Because other than that, it just doesn't make sense. This whole thing is ridiculous. But shame on the city for actually funding it and paying his bill for 2 years, and now they stopped. They should have never started to pay that thing since day one. So that's really what the problem is.
Well, so and I think that leads into what the hell we're going to talk about, is because, like, the city council, who's supposed to be oversight for all of our agencies, really it looks like public safety theater to me. It looks like integrity theater, like, because I don't see any. I haven't seen any in 4 years. I mean, we saw the most corrupt administration, like, basically get a free walk for literally every single thing that they were doing right out in the open, and literally getting in front of the city council, swearing in, and then lying under oath. And, like, now I'm watching, like, I watched this city council hearing, and we're not going to get through this, by the way, this episode. We're going to be talking about this next week. We're going to be going into, the FD&Y part of it, the deputy, the Department of Corrections part of it. There's a lot of things that tie into public safety and tie into NYPD and those portions as well. And we might have to even cover some of the NYPD testimony next week too, because there's just so much here. But I think right off the bat, Speaker Julie Menon starts to ask NYPD Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch about the Department of Community Safety. And in my opinion, when I watched this, I was like, yeah, it doesn't seem right to me. This seems like there was a conversation had prior to this meeting. Now, I don't know that that's the case, but it looks scripted to me. It looks like theater to me. It looks like everyone knows. It looks like myth building to me. And again, I personally believe that at some point this year, Tisch is going to leave, whether it's after the World Cup or not. I don't know. Again, I said the rumors are hot and heavy that she's gearing up to leave, and there's a lot of things that she could leave on. I believe that would politically be beneficial for her if in fact she's looking to run for office. You know, if she leaves, that it's a no-go for me to rebrand the SRG. Here it is. It's a no-go for me to hand these jobs over. So this was the first segment of the city council hearing. And in my opinion, it was cosplay. It was complete cosplay. Zohran Mamdani has dedicated $220 million to the Office of Community Safety, right? And as of right now, they have zero responsibility. There's nothing, there's not even talks being had. And I believe that this was a conversation that was had prior. And so my question is this to Julie Menin and to New York City Council, to everyone sitting up there, mainly the Democrats, because you control everything, but also to the Republicans, because I don't hear you yelling loud enough. What's going to be done about this? You have $220 million. We're told that we're in a budget crisis. Mamdani wants access to our pension funds. By all means, it looks like Lou Turco, Scott Moreau, who formed his coalition to push back at Mamdani's policies. He's all ears for Mamdani now, and he's ready to sign over access to your pension system, as well as Chris Monahan, because they're dead silent on this. It's wild. What's going to be done about this? What is being done about $220 million that you're telling us you're in a budget deficit, and we have an office that has zero responsibility, does absolutely nothing? It's actually, and we're going to get into Be Heard, and I'll show you the contrast between Be Heard and the Department of Community Safety, because it is stark. And even Be Heard, I believe, is a huge waste of money. So let's get into this right now. Here's the Department of Community Safety. Here's where we're up to. We've been talking about it. He's been talking about it since the moment he came on this podcast. We still have no idea how many members they're going to have, how they're going to operate. Are they going to operate 24/7, 365 days a year? Are they going to operate in holidays? What is going to be their responsibility here? And here's Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch telling you. Here it is.
Okay, moving to the Office of Community Safety. The executive plan included transfers of funding from existing departments and new funding to create the Office of Community Safety. Have any programs shifted from the NYPD's purview to OCS?
No.
To what extent is NYPD engaged with the administration, and what specific roles and coordination will occur between NYPD and OCS?
Those conversations have not yet commenced.
So the administration's announcement of approximately $260 million for the creation of OCS, there have been no conversations with NYPD about the agency and who will be doing what?
Not at this time. I expect that those conversations will begin to occur. But as I mentioned before, in response to the last question, no programmatic responsibility is being shifted from the NYPD to OCS at this time, and none that I know of going forward.
So in your view, so then what will the purview of OCS be?
The OCS has many different offices, some of which have existed in this city for a while, in other agencies that have all been consolidated. And I want to be clear, our work with those offices continues. And so that work certainly has not stopped, to the extent that the NYPD has worked with those offices in the past. That continues to this day. But we haven't had strategic conversations about what's going to shift from the NYPD to OCS, because nothing is planned at this time to be shifted. Mental health calls, as you know, the city has long had, I believe since the de Blasio administration, a program by the name of Be Heard, where you have mental health professionals working with EMTs to respond to 911 calls for service, where you have an emotionally disturbed person who is both nonviolent and does not have any weapons. That program has existed for at least 5 years, and that work continues.
Okay, so I know my other colleagues are probably going to have questions on this. I assume Chair Lee will as well. But it is still remains unclear then what the relationship between NYPD and OCS is around mental health calls and some of the other programming.
And as I mentioned, the city has long had a program by the name of Be Heard, where
What do you think, Marlon? Sounds like theater to me, bro. Oh, I'm going to defend the city here. We've had this great program, Be Heard, which I have all the data for in the coming rounds.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think Be Heard operates separately from the crisis management system. I think Be Heard is primarily out of 911 because, again, as she noted, it's a program to dispatch mental health professionals along with EMTs instead of cops to respond to nonviolent 911 mental health calls. But there's a lot of problems with this, just like there are problems with the CMS program. And John mentioned a few of them there, like the we don't know when these guys, the hours of operation here. What is that? Are those mental health professionals going to work at midnight? Because we do have a third platoon here in the NYPD. But again, the problem here is that in a lot of these cases, the 911 operators aren't dispatching them there because they don't know if there could be violence from that mental, that emotionally disturbed person. So they err on the side of caution and route it to 911. So again, it's you know I'm a little surprised too that the PC doesn't know about this either, because this it relates to 911 calls. So I think it behooves her to know how many of these calls get routed to Be Heard, and also to know the percentage of times the call is routed to Be Heard, and then NYPD has to show up anyway later at some point in the job. So I'm a little surprised she doesn't know this. I would think I would think someone at communications division, which operates how 911 is, would be aggregating this data and for her. So
From what I read so far, it seems like Be Heard is one of the tools in the toolbox, right? And the toolbox is the Office of Community Safety. So, and ultimately, there's a lot of overlap here. So, but ultimately, my best analogy is Be Heard for this whole thing, which is absolutely ridiculous. But since they're talking about it, Be Heard is like one of the tools in the toolbox of Office of Community Safety, which is already presently operating. But it's absolutely ridiculous, right? It's the Be Heard is the mental health emergency response assistance program that is pretty much already operating. But when we go further into this, it's quite interesting. You're going to see when they start to talk about the numbers, how many responses by the NYPD there are per year, and how many of those emotionally disturbed responses could be handled by this Office of Community Safety. And ultimately, what we don't even know is, out of those numbers that supposedly could be handled, how many of those go sideways? How many of those eventually need the police response? It's the most ridiculous thing. When you hear the numbers, they do a great job of giving you the numbers, which sounds like a lot. But when you get the percentages and you correlate those to the numbers, like, wow, it's really nothing. So they're telling you, and that's a great point, that we've been trying to stomp our feet and have people understand and get those loudest voices in the room, which should be the unions, not the Finest Unfiltered. The loudest voice in the room right now is the Finest Unfiltered. It should be a union saying, wait a minute, you want to tap into our pensions, but you have $260 million to waste on this nonsense, this garbage, this Office of Community Safety and Be Heard. You can wipe your ass with it. You can take $260 million and throw it in the garbage because it's just pure trash. Because when they go further in this city council hearing and break down the numbers, this is where it's shocking. I say to myself, wow, there are people that go out and vote these people. These people actually have jobs. The New York City Council people actually get up in the morning and go to work and feel that they accomplished anything. $260 million. And you don't go further on to say, wait a minute, what are we doing with this money? We're tapping into the pensions of our city agency workers that support the city, because we don't have funding, but we have $260 million to throw at a project that no one even knows how it works, that there's no correlation, that we're supposedly inches and nearly from commencing this Office of Community Safety, and our police commissioner has no idea how it works, and if it's actually going to be effective. It's the most ridiculous thing. You are watching pure theater, and the city council, every time we have one of these hearings, it's just great TV. That's all it is, because it goes nowhere. It's absolutely ridiculous. $260 million. Where are these unions? Why are you not stopping your feet? You should be angry. We should hear you right now. It should be so much nonsensical noise that they're just tired of hearing it. They want to tap into your pensions. But okay, the Finest Unfiltered, they're the bad guys because they actually want to tell you that they want to tap into your pension. But they have $260 million for this trash, waste of time. Absolutely, it's ridiculous that we could throw money at this Be Heard, which is already, to me, in my opinion, useless when you hear the percentages of the numbers, which is going to be just a tool in the toolbox of Office of Community Safety. She keeps talking about OCS. That's Office of Community Safety, where Zohran Mamdani ran his campaign on. It's the most ridiculous thing. John, what are your thoughts?
Wait, before John goes, where are the FDNY and EMS unions? Considering later on in this, you hear about the assaults on cops, city workers, cops and transit. Where are the FDNY unions to speak up about this program and about their membership potentially getting hurt from it?
Yeah, I think honestly, we really got to stop calling them unions. There's only one organization currently in America that stands up for rank and file city workers. It's called the Finest Unfiltered, and I think it's not just for cops. So there are no unions. The people like they should be doing exactly what we're doing, advocating, getting out in the media. Instead of making deals with Albany and making deals in city council, they should be advocating against all this nonsense. But for me, like when I sit here, I don't even care because I already look at them as a bunch of grift and frauds. I have no love for any of them. And that's just, it's never going to change for me. Even if tomorrow they stop on a dime, I'll never forget who they were these last 5 years. So to me, it doesn't matter. But we're sitting here watching the chair of city council, the oversight for the taxpayer, just basically get fed slop from every city agency in the mayor's office, and there is zero being done about it. And it's been the case for the last 6 years. Absolute slop, absolute waste of taxpayer money. Why the hell do you think we're in a budget deficit? Why do we need an Office of Community Safety if we have the Be Heard program? It's the same exact thing. It's different levels of funding, different grift. Makes absolutely no sense. So the Be Heard program, I think in 2025, roughly got about $35 million in taxpayer funding. Not a lot of money by all of the stretch, but at least they're functioning somewhat. I'm not going to say that they're good or that it's that basically we should be spending money on that, but at least there is some people working and they do respond to some 911 jobs. Now, you're going to hear exactly which 911 jobs they respond to and how many, and that'll be in this clip. But there's no follow-up from New York City Council because after Titch testifies on what Be Heard's numbers are, and there's a huge discrepancy, and we'll get into that next week, because actually the Be Heard FDNY, Be Heard falls on the FDNY, and FDNY contradicts exactly what Titch says here. So somebody's not telling the truth. I'm going to lean on the side of Titch has the actual numbers and FDNY doesn't. But there's going to be a huge contradiction there. But I'm sitting there and I'm going, well, I want to know how many of those jobs that they responded to did the NYPD have to actually respond to? And I also want to know what the response time is on those jobs. If we hold FDNY, EMS, and NYPD to response times, I want to know what Be Heard's response times are. And I think if you knew their response times, you would be like, end this program immediately, because I'm thinking their response time is going to be somewhere within a 10-day range. You know, right now, I think response time 911 calls citywide is about 16 minutes, which is way too long. I think it's even more when you look at it on another scale. But I think when you look at Be Heard, I think their response time is days, if not weeks. So listen to how effective your tax money is being used.
At 911, we get about 4.3 million calls for service each year. Of those, the emotionally disturbed persons, nonviolent, no weapons, 85,793. So of the overall calls for service, approximately 2% are divertible to Be Heard. Okay, now I'll give you the numbers for this year. So there were 17, so between January and April, first 4 months of the year, there were 17,961 calls where Be Heard was requested. Is that right? Was requested? Where Be Heard was requested. They responded to 1,411 of them. So that is 7.9% of the calls that they were requested to respond to.
Is that a lack of the teams that they have?
You have to ask FDNY.
Okay, I'll definitely ask them, but
Point is.
So imagine that 911 gets called, the call gets routed to Be Heard, and they only respond to 7.9% of the calls. 7.9% of the calls that are assigned to them. Out of the 911 unit, out of those 4 million calls, it's 0.01%. Think about that. Is that something that we should be funding right now? Is this, and this, by the way, is the model for the Office of Community Safety.
Well, I'll add something else to that, right? So let me pull this up here. So the office, the Independent Budget Office, right, released a report in January of this year where they talked about the response times from EMS, right? EMS is currently at 11 minutes 21 seconds response times, right? Now let's go to the Be Heard program, right? Be Heard, their response times are currently 20 to 26 minutes, which is up from the
Wait, time out. How could their response times be 26 minutes when we just said that out of the 100% of calls that were routed to them, they only actually responded to 7%. Their response time, that is not an accurate, that whoever's putting this out it's frivolous. Because basically what them telling you that they only responded to 7% of the things they're called to is that there are still jobs right now, 93% of the jobs that they were called to, they never responded to. So there's still, those response times are still running. So I get what you're saying, and I know you're pulling the data that New York City's giving you, but it's slop. The response times are running for 97% of the jobs. So if we look at their response times, it's going to be weeks.
Well,
in reality.
Yeah, well, it's like we said, there's a lot, there are no metrics to a lot of these units, and I'm sure they're just removing, I don't see it in it, but I'm sure they're just removing the jobs that weren't responded to. We're talking, that's the response times of the jobs they actually got to.
Of the 7% or 0.01% of all the 911 calls. They're only giving you those response times, which is honestly, that's a lie. And testifying to that is perjury. The response times are running on 97% of these jobs today. Currently, they're still running from the moment they came in. Like, I want to know what those numbers really are.
Well, does perjury actually matter anymore in the city?
No, absolutely not. City Council, because we've played over and over again. Numerous agencies perjure themselves intentionally, knowingly and intentionally perjure themselves, and nothing done.
Included the former sheriff for New York City. We heard a debacle there, and nothing was ever held accountable. That's why I say these city council hearings are just just complete TV, because where do they go? It's useless. I mean, the questions and answers that you see in the city council, the responses that you get, you say almost every response warrants an investigation. Like this right here should warrant an investigation. Wait a minute, we're spending $260 million and there's only at a 4.3 million calls. This is the percentage that was actually handled by this unit. I mean, which I think is important to understand, is a tool in the toolbox. So the toolbox itself is completely flawed, which is going to cost more than $260 million, because Be Heard is just one of the tools inside the toolbox of Office of Community Safety. So how much money is this toolbox going to cost the city, the taxpayer money that is pretty much useless? And out of those 7%, how many of those actually required a police response afterwards? How many actually ended up requiring a police response? That's what I would like to know. That is the elephant in the room.
Yeah, well, to that, we've talked before about the co-response unit, which is another similar unit, and I've mentioned before, like when I used to call them, they would ask me if I'm gonna be there, and I'm like, I can't, I got other case to work on, and they would tell me that we're not showing up unless you're gonna be there. So it goes back to that point. How many of those jobs cops are gonna have to show up anyway?
Yeah, that's the key element. And I mean, just keep in mind, I want people to actually just listen to those numbers again. 4.3 million calls. And when they break down and give you the numbers, it's like, oh wow. If you didn't say 4.3 million calls and you just said 85, you said about 85,000 responses were directed towards this Be Heard program, and then actually only 7% that actually were responded. 85,000 sounds like a lot, but 85,000 in New York City is nothing. Nothing. It's smithereens in comparison to 4.3 million. But yet we're spending $260 million towards this organization, and at the same time preparing to rip away at the pensions of the people that support this entire city. This is a joke. This is a joke. So you're right. Forget about calling these people unions. It's the most ridiculous thing. They might as well just be called the New York City Mafia, because that's what they're doing. They have a stronghold and they're in bed with the enemy. How do you not fight to the teeth right now? This is a fight that we should hear no end. There should be so much noise in this. This is insane. $260 million for a useless idea, where in reality, we don't know out of those responses where the police had to handle it anyway. And if the police didn't have to respond right there and then, did the police end up responding to a sequence of calls? What point did the police have to get involved, if anything? And I would say probably 99.9% of the time, without knowing, that's my opinion, I would say probably 99.9% of the time, somehow the NYPD had to get involved in some facet or some form.
So the thing is, there was a shooting, and I can't think of it off the top of my head right now, but they wanted these cops tried. It sat in Letitia James' office for over a year, even though an NYPD investigator said it was a good shoot, and Letitia James' office said it was a good shoot, where an individual called 911 on himself, pretended to be a concerned family member, and then when the cops got there, he charged them with a firearm, and they shot him. What never really came out, what the leftist media and the weak, fake, soft, conservative, controlled opposition media failed to ever address and tell you, is that individual's family actually did call on him 3 weeks prior, and it took 3 weeks for Be Heard to respond to him. They responded to him. They did absolutely zero. They called 911 one more time on the family member. The cops came. They brought him. He was treated and released almost immediately. Then he called on himself. And then eventually, that's when he called on himself. And then the cops got there immediately. They wanted to see what was going on. He charged them with a knife. Unfortunately, they had to use the minimal amount of necessary force, which was, they had to meet deadly physical force with deadly physical force. And as a result of his own actions, he passed away that day. And then those cops were put on the back burner, and for years, and I think they're still being screwed with. Honestly, I think that this whole debacle has upended their entire lives. And so when you look at those scenarios, and I know that you guys know, but for those of you in the public that don't know, when we talk about emotionally disturbed individuals, I mean, when you're a police officer, you know who they are. You know those problematic locations. You know those problematic people. You deal with them often. And so I'm going to say that in every single case, maybe there might be a small minority of cases where this isn't the case, but almost in every single case, it will be that NYPD has been involved, has to be involved in some facet, and usually before, during, and after those Be Heard calls. So yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. And then Lincoln Wrestler goes and drills down on it even further, right? And now, I'm not going to take credit for this. Sal said it. I'm not like Sal. I don't pretend I made things up that somebody else said, which he normally, does. But Sal said it. Sal called Lincoln Wrestler the Trey Gowdy of New York. And it's so true, man, because if you guys remember Trey Gowdy, he used to rip people apart at all of these hearings, and then absolutely zero was done about it after. And then Trey Gowdy went to be a Fox News talking head, and that's it. And I think Lincoln Wrestler, who I would cast as a member of the Golden Girls if there is a redo episode. I'd make him the old grandmother, because he definitely he has that same perm going on that she had, but I think when you look at Lincoln, he nails the points always. I mean, some points he doesn't. He's just completely off. When we talk about Rikers, you'll see that. But like when it comes to 911 responses, I believe he's usually right. When he comes to talking about this, I think he's right. But nothing's going to get done about this. Like, when is the city council hearing going to be of the Office of Community Safety and absolutely rip into them? And then not only rip into them, but there should be consequences that come as a result of this. There should be consequences in the budget. There should be items removed from the budget. This is what these budget hearings are for. The budget hearings here are to determine whether or not these items are actually going to be put into the budget. So why do we listen about these groups and these units and these, whatever you want to call them, agencies that even now we're putting up? Why are we listening about this, knowing it's an all waste of money, knowing that there's no metrics to success, knowing that these things failed? And at the end of the day, these hearings are going to happen. And what's going to happen? They're going to get more money than they got the previous year. I just saw about Bragg, that the nursing home that's in question, not the nursing home, the non-for-profit that has all of the government contracts, not all of the government contracts, but over $200 million in contracts related to housing illegals. I just saw they're under federal investigation. We're not going to touch any of that funding. We're just going to keep a close eye. So nothing's happening. Basically, all of the corruption that was happening is going to maintain. And this is the same thing here. You're going to listen to all of the incompetence, all of the ineptness, and nothing's going to happen, because at the end of the day, Lincoln and everyone else is going to vote to approve this budget. Budget's going to get approved, and all this stuff's going to stay in here. And then New York City voters are going to be like, yeah, no, the council's working. Like, are they? Because they ain't working for you. So here's Lincoln Wrestler on Be Heard again.
I was also deeply troubled by the data you shared around Be Heard. So I'll just walk through the data that I think I heard, and you can correct me if I said something.
I got to get it out.
You get it out. I'll talk while you get it out.
Okay.
So 4.3 million calls to 911 annually. You said that in the first 4 months of this year, only 17,961 of the calls you received were appropriate for Be Heard. Is that right?
Hold on.
Yeah, Alex says
yes, that is correct.
So that's about 54,000 calls annually. So 54,000 calls out of 4.3 million is that 1.2% of calls into 911 are appropriate for Be Heard, according to the police department's view.
So the total number of non-violent, non-weapon calls
EDP.
for emotionally disturbed persons in 2024 was 85,793. So we believe that if you say that that's going to be constant every year, or the percentage is about 2% of 911 calls for service under the current criteria.
Right, so I had you at 1.2 based on the first 4 months of this year. You're saying in 24 it was a little higher, but in that range. So firstly, I just think for this administration that's taking a different approach, that we want to invest in alternative responses for nonviolent situations, saying that 1 to 2% of our calls is appropriate for be heard, I think is unfortunate. But even more troubling, which is not on your plate, is that for 97% of the calls year to date, just 1,411 out of the 17,961 calls that were appropriate for be heard, according to you, just 2.6% of those calls were actually responded to by be heard. So
I have 1,411 out of 17,961, 7.9% from January 1st to April
That's right.
30th.
So to put a finer point on all of that, that is 0.01% of calls that be heard is responding to. 0.01% of calls. That is so small, it's a rounding error, it's negligible. Does the program even exist? We're spending gosh knows how many hundreds of millions of dollars on this program. It was functioning at some point. It doesn't seem like it's even functioning today. So we have some questions for the fire department and health and hospitals for why be heard is essentially irrelevant. I think that of the lowest of low-hanging fruit in the vision of what the Office of Community Safety can be, and eventually the Department of Community Safety, to my colleagues, is that nicely done? Thank you, Nan. We got a co-sponsor in the room. This is the lowest of low-hanging fruit, and it's an embarrassment. I'll do round two because I talked.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane, dude. And I just want everyone listening to just keep in mind that when we in the coming weeks, when we talk about the FDNY's testimony, and when we talk about the Department of Corrections testimony, the NYPD is the most efficient agency in the city by far. It's apples to oranges. It's like, it's like Ivy League testimony style versus third grade. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Like this is where hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars are going to idiots. The mayor appoints idiots. The mayor is an idiot. I mean, this has been the case for the last 12 years. I'm not just singling out Zohran Mamdani here. The mayor's an idiot. His appointees are idiots. Recently, we were at like junior high school level in the NYPD. Now we've brought it up a little bit in this new administration. But even with this, I mean, so you're hearing complete, utter incompetence and mismanagement of hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to point out also that, before Lincoln Russell went into that, he talked about incarceration and basically how he wants to, get rid of the jails. So I think it's important. Well, I think it's also important to note that Lincoln Russell, I think the last time we talked about it, he was tied up with the City of Yes and the Smart City whole initiative, and development. And it's clear that this guy doesn't want people getting locked up because they want to MP Rikers and they want redevelopment of that whole area. But I just thought I'd bring up that context because again, this is a guy who really doesn't want people getting locked up. He mentioned it.
We have twice as many people incarcerated in Rikers right now from Brooklyn as what that jail can accommodate. We need an all-hands approach from the police department, from the Department of Correction, from the courts, and from a whole lot of other stakeholders, including the council, to work together to drive down incarceration in New York City. And I'd hope that you'd be a partner in that effort so that we can reduce unnecessary incarceration, reduce the amount of time that people are incarcerated, all.
So yeah, he mentioned that before that part, and later on in the testimony, he then gets into a back and forth with LaPetrie over cops actually doing their job and standing in front of a location that gets robbed, that gets a lot of theft in downtown Brooklyn. So this guy's kind of wacky, and there is an agenda behind what he's talking about, and it's no incarceration.
Now, I watched most of the city council hearing. I didn't get a chance to watch all of it. I was busy, but I was fascinated by this portion of it because I'm sure everyone knows Lincoln Russell himself is a supporter of the Be Heard program. And so if you listen to that part, if you listen to that segment, what he said ultimately is that he, in my opinion, is disappointed that the Be Heard program has these numbers, because he didn't say, well, here are the numbers and here's the data, and this is why it's an ultimate failure. He said, here is the numbers according to you. He said, here's the numbers according to you, Jessica Tisch. Think about it. He said, according to you. So based on my observations, and I watched that several times, to me, I took it as, well, these are the numbers that you're given, and I don't really believe it. But based on these numbers, because he said, well, here's the numbers, and it's really unfortunate. Because it's unfortunate because they want the numbers to show that this is going to be a success. And ultimately, he had to say it's a complete failure. Spending $260 million on something that's only useful at 0.1%, which is ultimately nothing, which is pretty much zero, is an ultimate failure with spending $260 million, which is why, in my opinion, he said it's unfortunate. Yeah, it's unfortunate because you want it to work. He wants it to work. He doesn't want incarceration. He doesn't want police. He's all about defund the police. He wants, in my opinion, and not only my opinion, evidence, and we look at the track record of Lincoln Wrestler, is everything is about defund the police and anti-police, a lot of rhetoric that comes from it. And he wants the Be Heard program to work because he supports the Be Heard program. And under the Office of Community Safety, that tool in the toolbox is an ultimate failure. It's complete, and he had to say it because those are numbers. But he did say, if you listen to it again, according to you. So which me, in my opinion, I took it as, well, I don't think he trusts the data that Jessica Tisch is running and reading out. And the reality is, I think the data that Jessica Tisch is giving, that is not even accurate, because out of those 1,400 calls, how many did the police eventually have to respond or do a follow-up or have to have some type of intervention? In my opinion, and this is why it's ultimately a complete failure, if you have to call 911 for someone that's emotionally disturbed, the police must respond. Because if there's no need for the police, then someone who's emotionally disturbed would go see a doctor. Because if it's not urgent, you could easily go see a doctor. So it's the most ridiculous thing. Out of those 1,400 calls, how many did eventually the police have to have some type of intervention? Whether it was a follow-up, a sequence of events, or even a conversation with the NYPD, what was the level of NYPD interaction, if any? And again, going back to Lincoln Wrestler, to me, what he said was, I don't believe the data. I don't believe you, because he supports it. But at the same token, he had to say that ultimately it's a failure because those are numbers he was presented with. So, listen, I'm not going to give any kudos to Lincoln Wrestler here. He called out what had to be called out, but to me, I took it as it's unfortunate that this program doesn't have the data to support it.
Well, there's a lot of things, dude, and so this is theater, dude. Like, so none of this is real. So Lincoln Wrestler knows that. This is the appearance of oversight. That's all this is. If actual oversight would be like, yeah, scratch that off the budget. Scratch that off the budget. Be Heard? Okay, scratch it off the budget. Be Heard does nothing? Get it out of there. Office of Community Safety does nothing? Okay, scratch it off the budget. There's it. I just saved the city right now $300 million. It's that simple. That's how oversight works. And then when you listen to him go further with the clip that Marlon played about Rikers, he wants Jessica Tisch to be a partner in reducing the jail population of Rikers Island. Now, we'll talk about this more next week, but I just want you to think about that, right? I just want you to think about that. How is the police department going to be a partner in reducing the jail population? Police department goes out there, they respond to crimes, they arrest criminals. They should be a victim-centric organization, not a criminal-centric organization. How would they help reduce the jail population other than to say, hey, I know there's a lot of bad people doing a lot of bad things. Maybe you guys could just arrest a little more. So this is where you see Lincoln Wrestler's ideology really coming out. And the reason they want to do that is because they want Rikers to close. Rikers should have been closed by, I think, 2 years ago. Obviously, they don't know what they're doing and they're incompetent people. So they make plans and deadlines for things that they can never accomplish. Now they're saying in 2029, they want Rikers closed. And they want to move to a borough-based jail system, which is totally reckless and criminally negligent, in my opinion. Because when you look at the moving to a borough-based jail system is spending literally hundreds of billions of dollars to build these facilities across all 5 boroughs, right? So to renovate Rikers would be so much less. It'd be so much less money. And what they're trying to do and say is that, like, if we just moved Rikers Island to different newer facilities, none of the problems at Rikers Island would exist. When literally none of the problems at Rikers Island exist because of the infrastructure. They exist because of the lack of management, because of the incompetence of New York City's elected and their appointed officials, right? And we saw that under the Adams administration with Molina, who just failed forward to become in charge of basically every city agency after he failed miserably at the Department of Corrections. So, you know, you look at that and you listen to people like that and you're like, well, does he really care? No, but he sounds like he does. He sounds like he does. So, and then the other thing when we talk about moving Rikers to borough-based jails is that right now the current population at Rikers Island, 7,600 people. It's about 0.08% of New York City's population. But we're being told that there's a mass incarceration problem because 0.08%. Now, when you compare that to arrests, there's about 250,000 people arrested each year in New York City. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. So it's not on the NYPD's control. These people go to court, they get found guilty by they either go to court or they're being held for their dangerousness or their repeat offenses. And they're held in Rikers. So yeah, 100% people are held there that are awaiting trial that technically haven't been found guilty of anything, but are severe public safety threats. And even in spite of bail reform are still put in Rikers. You have 7,600 people there. The borough-based jail system only houses 3,300 people. It's set to house 3,300 people. So less than half of what's being in Rikers Island now, New York City wants to go. That's about 0.04% of the population of New York's population. So it's dangerous, in my opinion. It's reckless. Basically, what Lincoln Russell is actually advocating for is to free them all. That's what he wants. He doesn't want anyone in jail. Now, I'm sure he wants people like myself in jail, people that don't align with him politically, people that have a different ideology than him, people that won't take a vaccine. You know, people like that, I'm sure he believes should be in jail. You know, cops, they should go to jail. But actual criminals, no, we need to free them all. Think about that. That is insane. It's criminally negligent. No one's speaking about it. And all the police commissioner said was understood. That's it. I mean, I don't know what she could have responded to it, but it was absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous for him to say that. And again, this is Lincoln Russell is speaking for about 95% of the city council right here. 95% of all Democrats, Andrew Cuomo, your buddy Eric Adams, all of them, they all wanted to close Rikers and move to this borough-based jail system. They're all under free them all. So don't tell me Eric Adams is a good guy. He's a nice guy. I don't give a shit that he marched in the Israeli Day Parade. He's a grifter. He's selling you guys a bag of goods, and you guys are too stupid to see it.
Yeah. Yeah, just a reminder for you guys who aren't aware of it, who may have missed the episodes we talked about it because, you know, we've grown a lot since. But yeah, the plan is to, there are a lot of developers eyeing Rikers Island, and the price tag last I checked was around 12 billion that you know that would go into the city's coffers for selling that real estate to developers, right? And John is absolutely correct. They're all in on this. Okay, they all want this, and the current closing date is supposed to be August 31st, 2027. I doubt that's going to happen because, like John said, these people can't even keep their own deadlines, you know. So they're all in on it, and they're all in the pockets of the city developers, the billionaire class developers of the city. Now, going back to what Eric says, Eric made a great point there about 911 and emotionally disturbed persons. And I just want to bring up again the co-response unit, which they don't run through 911. So 911 is for imminent emergencies, right? We all know this. The co-response unit, you call them via phone or you send them an email, and you know, in the NYPD, you call them by phone, you send an email asking them to respond to this location because this person, see if we can give the family and this person resources that will prevent them from going over the edge, you know? And something to know about that is even that unit, which doesn't operate through the 911 system, meaning those calls aren't, it's not like that person, you're not going to ask for the correspondence unit to respond to a person who is about to commit or about to go over the edge, you know, or about to get violent, or anyone we think is an imminent threat, right? And even that unit, even the correspondence unit, asks for you to be there while they're responding to those EDPs, right? So how is it that Be Heard is expected to respond in an emergency, right? And they're not, meaning there's an imminent, you know, potential imminent danger from that person. They're being asked to respond to them, and without the police to be there, you know. So it's kind of crazy. But I think the elephant in the room here is because it's money, and the city wants to do more with less. So rather than have both EMS and police respond to one job, why not have EMS respond to one job and cops could continue responding to other job? It's like you're splitting up the resources, you know, and doing more with less you have, because again, as we talked about, the city is broke, and that's the elephant in the room that was in this hearing. And it's tied to the lack of the understaffing of the NYPD, and that was also a theme that was running through all of this discussion at city council.
Well, after watching that city council hearing, you don't have to be from New York City to say, wow, now I get it. I get why the city is broke. It's almost like if I said to you, you know what? I'm going to go out. I'm going to spend $100,000. I'm going to buy this brand new car. But after 2 days, it doesn't work. The battery dies. You can't even drive it anymore. It's pretty much useless. And then you're like, well, now I got no money left. Well, that's what New York City does right now. Let's take $260 million. Let's put it towards this program that is pretty much useless. If it was so effective, you should be telling us, or we should hear that it's been effective more than 50% of the time. More than 50% of the calls have been handled by Be Heard, which is one of the tools in the toolbox of Office of Community Safety. And we see the umbrella of Office of Community Safety that is going to handle a majority of the calls. But we're talking about 2%. But ultimately, the real numbers were 0.01%. Do the numbers. What is 0.01%? Percentages mean nothing when you actually talk about numbers. 0.01% is nothing on the grand scheme of things. 4.3 million calls. And I'll go back to this. I say this quite often. If someone is emotionally disturbed and the police do not need to respond, well, then they would see a doctor, or a doctor would come see them. There would be no reason for 911. 911 is for an emergency. Think about that. And emotionally disturbed is on all different planes, right? Because someone is involved in a domestic situation. Those are two people that are emotionally disturbed. If you're having an issue with your wife or your husband or your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever the case, whoever your significant other is, and if you call the police to intervene, or someone else called the police because it was so loud that they were worried, and you needed intervention, you're both emotionally disturbed, and the police need to respond. Almost all cases involving a police response, someone or all parties there are emotionally disturbed. This completely falls on its face. Now let's talk about Rikers Island. Supporters of the idea of moving to borough-based jails have supported saying that a smaller jail that is closer to the courthouses would eliminate overtime. It would eliminate cost, because someone that's being transported to court could go to their borough-based court, which is next to the jail. And the other thing is critics and also supporters of Rikers say that it's more humane to have a smaller location. How about we just fix the system? It's not the complex itself, because in theory, and actually, if you just look at the idea of a prison system being on an island, it's the most safest thing. It makes sense, and it's not an eyesore. But if we put a borough-based jail, it becomes an eyesore. But really, what we need to do is fix the system. Why is Rikers Island so violent? They want to pretend that if we put the same system in a different building, that we're going to get a different product. It's the most ridiculous thing, because we're moving to a smaller jail. No, we still have the same system in place. The problem is the correctional officers are not being supported. The problem is that people are going to Rikers that are completely mentally insane, and we don't have a dichotomy and a distinction between those that are emotionally disturbed and mentally ill and also being housed. Those are some of the issues, but the reality is it all comes down to real estate and development, and that's why they want to move Rikers Island. They're all in on it. I absolutely believe that this is part of the economic wheel in New York City. There's no doubt about it, because taking the same system from Rikers Island into these borough-based jails doesn't make any sense. You haven't changed the system, you only changed the location. Those are my thoughts on it.
Well, how about I could close the entire budget gap right now by just diminishing this entire plan? You know, I just read it again. It's 2029. They're saying now. They're saying now it's good. I know they pushed it to 2027. Now they're saying 2029. So I mean, I'll just get rid of it. The budget gap's closed. That's it. You don't have to touch our pensions. You don't have to do anything, and fix Rikers. Restructure Rikers. Give it huge upgrades. But you could build buildings on it. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So that's it. I solved your budget crisis, Zoran. You know, and you could still fund all your bullshit programs, right? And this ridiculous idea, you could house the population you currently have, and as crime trends continue to rise, because they are continuing to rise, and we'll get into that. Even though you're being told crime's down, crime's actually, it's not. You know, maybe you want to talk about certain crimes, you want to piecemeal things out. It's not. But I think the most important thing that that came out of this hearing is we found out that although President Trump's in office, New York City and DEI has been federally outlawed. When it comes to a city level or it comes to a state level, in New York City, diversity, equity, inclusion is thriving. So Dr. Natasha Williams, she's a doctor because she's so smart. She talks about one of the NYPD's racial equity goals. And I think it's completely legal. It violates equal opportunity law. We saw this type of mentality throughout the entire Adams administration, and it led to sheer incompetence and blatant corruption that was completely unaddressed, and it weakened the NYPD's stance in law enforcement, in the world, in the community, in New York City. Dangerous, illegal, discriminatory, but here we go. We need to continue to double down. Listen to the NYPD's racial equity goals.
Another goal is to increase representation in leadership positions and specialized units by 2028. Which units currently have the lowest levels of diversity?
I have to get back to you. We can get back to you with the diversity by unit.
Okay. Just turning.
So they want to increase diversity amongst leadership and in units. Basically, they're saying they want less whites in leadership and in units. That's what that language actually is. That's what Dr. Natasha Williams is asking for. When should we expect less white people in leadership and in specialized units?
Before we get into that, I saw a quick question from Modern Samurai, and about the last segment about the Rikers. Just so you know, Modern Samurai, the FAA is in the process of redistricting the airspace, right? So they're rerouting, they're changing flight patterns and where flights will be passing in the future. And part of the reason why is because with the growth of electric vehicle, electrical quadcopters, and commercial drone usage, the billionaires know that flight patterns, including flight patterns over LaGuardia, are going to change. So whereas you're hearing flights every day fly over there, now in the future, that's not going to be the case. So the developers are doing what they do, being that they are privy to alpha, which is like basically it's early investment news. It's like when you get a tip about what's happening. They know this is happening, so they're trying to get ahead of it and gobble up the land so they could build up luxury condos on the land and sell it later on when these flight patterns do change. So just so you know.
And what I just want to add on to that That's been happening since the de Blasio administration in 2013. There's been a sole focus on changing the flight patterns around Rikers Island. And from that point in time, I've been saying they're looking to get rid of Rikers Island because they want to build luxury condos on Rikers Island, and it's going to be a place for the rich, and the rest of you peasants are all going to live in the 5 boroughs, and so that is the plan. That's exactly why we're closing Rikers, but we don't even need to push that far ahead because their plan on the ground fails on its face, so.
Yeah, but what Williams is saying there is like crazy, right? And I'm curious I hope the NYPD does release that data to her too, because I think that data is going to actually backfire in their face when we actually see it and get to go through it ourselves.
This is the best part, in my opinion. As I said before, this was the best part and segment of the city council here, because I said to myself, this is the moment. I have no aspirations, I'll tell you right now, to ever go back to the NYPD. I don't want any positions at all. I don't want anything to do with law enforcement. I'm happy doing this network, and I do other businesses on the side. But I'll say this. This was the point in time where I said, man, I wish I was the police commissioner right now. This is the question that I want to sit for, because I would just fire back with questions. That's how I would fire back on this one. Say, I understand your question. So you're asking which units are lacking diversity and which positions of leadership. I would love to get that question, because I would say, okay, well, I have a question for you. What is the purpose of this information? Are you asking me what is the diversity in qualifications, or are you asking me the diversity questions in the appearance, in their race, their gender, their sexuality? What exactly are you asking? That would be the point where I would just fire back with questions. Because if you want to ask for the diversity and qualifications, I can tell you right now, there's numerous diverse qualifications. There are exams, and then upon appointment into positions of leadership, it's their experience as commanders, their experience on commanding different units. What exactly are you asking? What is the purpose? That is the opportunity to fire back with questions. Instead, Jessica Tisch said, I have to get back to you, because she knows the question is the most ridiculous thing, and they have to figure out how to formulate a response. But that would have been a point. I would have fired back. You know what? That's a great question, but I don't understand what the question is. What exactly are you asking? What is the purpose of this? Because what is diverse? If I have a unit that is predominantly white, that was predominantly black, is that now diverse? If I have a unit that is predominantly made up of heterosexual males, is that now diverse? I have a unit that is now all homosexual males. Is that diverse? What exactly are you asking? What is the purpose? If you want to know about the diversity of their qualifications, I can pull up their jackets and their profile. I'll tell you what level of college they have, what type of degrees, what certifications they have, what type of arrest they have in their careers. What do you mean by diversity other than the appearance? It's the most ridiculous question. That should be fired back with questions. That was the only point I said to myself. I would love to be the police commissioner right now. Fire back. That is stupid and idiotic. It's actually, what it's saying is, this is what I got from it. Are we currently discriminating against white males to make sure that we have more black males or black females? She might as well have just said that, because that's how I took it.
The thing is, though, that's what the NYPD said they were going to do. That was the NYPD's goal. That came out from Tisch's office, that she is going to do that. So that's Natasha Williams was saying, well, where are you? You said you were going to do this. Where are you on it? And it's disgusting. It shows that there is still this race conscious agenda happening in the NYPD that started in 2013, and it's continuing to further itself. It's continuing to move. So, Tisch couldn't push back because she's the one that said she was going to do it. It's sick, man. And then, I'm sorry, but and I'm sorry, there was a lot of talk about the overtime and how, the NYPD apparently never tracked overtime until Jessica Tisch came in. I didn't know, because I was an integrity control officer, and I was a supervisor for a long time, and I saw just how tracked that overtime was. The problem is we had incompetent people in positions, and we had DEI hires in position, DEI supervisors in positions. And so she sat there and pretended like there was basically no overtime tracking until I came. She testified in one portion. And she sat there and she was like, but now with me and First Deputy Commissioner Kinsella there, that changed. Like, we're doing a great job now, and we're actually, we're bringing the overtime levels down. And I'll get to that point. But while we're on DEI, I gotta say, I don't mean to pick on the girl. I know a lot of people like her. I know she's a nice girl. I'm not saying anything about her as a person. As the First Deputy Commissioner, she has absolutely no business being there. And I'm sorry, but this is what happens with DEI. In my opinion, she was too inexperienced, too young. She is not a good speaker. She is not a good manager. And I'm saying all of this because of what happened during the overtime scandal. And I'm saying this because how she continues to speak at these hearings and how she continues to really, honestly, it's like when I say the other agencies are like third grade, I mean, this is like kindergarten. She doesn't even answer the questions. I mean, listen to this.
Then with subway surfing, go ahead.
Okay.
How you doing?
I'm good.
So we take arrests. We work with our DOE partners really well.
Oh, you facilitated that whole thing. You were at the first meeting.
Yes, 65% of incidents that occur in schools now are mitigated by DOE. We meet with our DOE partners on a monthly basis. We also meet with the advocates on a quarterly basis to try to work with the advocates in DOE so we don't have to arrest and have DOE take on more of the incidents.
So you're working interagency. So you're working with Project Pivot, who's on the ground, which is the cure violence groups they have in schools.
Yes, 351 schools Project Pivot is in. We provide support in those schools during the times that Project Pivot is going on.
Okay, in your crisis intervention team training, the numbers hours for uniform members in communications.
All right, we don't need to go any further, but you get my point, dude. Like, I'm sorry, it's brutal to listen to. It's absolutely brutal. Like, what are you talking about? Oh yeah, and then let me give you this other little fact that I just found out right this second. I have no idea what you asked me, and I don't really know anything about the program, but these are the facts I was able to pull up that were right in front of me. And it's brutal, dude. I'm sorry. Like, you're not tuned in. You're not plugged in. I'm sure if I asked her about a marathon or a 5K or a race or something else, she would give me a lot different response than she's given me to answers that we need, that the taxpayers deserve the answers to. Like, I'm sorry that this is the problem. Like, this is a fucking huge problem. It's an embarrassment. Honestly, it's an embarrassment.
It is, but I gotta say I've grown to like hearing Tanya speak. She's so 90s in her talk. So like 90s Bronx. It's almost like I'm hearing like a early 90s Jennifer Lopez anytime she talks. It's somebody made that comment here a couple episodes back that it was like that she's Tanya from the block. Just because she sounds so much like.
But I don't even care how she talks, dude. I'm saying the substance of what she's saying.
I know.
Dude, my father couldn't speak for anything, bro. He said tree was 3, Earl was oil, soil was Searle. He had like an old Lower East Side accent. But like when I asked him a question, he was able to answer the question. Like, you know what I mean? He knew, but so I'm not going to hold someone accountable for where they grew up and whatever type of dialect they have or like slang they use. I'm saying answer the question. You don't even know what you're in charge of.
Yeah, you're right. But I think that's all part of the package. If you happen to rise to that rank, right? You have more than. I'm not a good public speaker, but I admit that. Okay, but I've never been in the type of role that I had to do that for a living. Nor was I in the role where I'm getting paid $200K a year plus to be a good speaker. Okay, if I'm getting paid $200K a year, I'm gonna start sounding like freaking Obama up there. And Tanya's had long enough in that role where she should both know what she's talking about and be a good public speaker. Okay, it's part of the package that comes. If you don't want to have that responsibility, then go back to being a deputy inspector or was she even a full bird inspector? I'm not even sure.
Yeah,
But
no, she flew. She flew to one stall. Like it was one of the quickest rises ever.
yeah, I don't
She
even
was
remember when
promoted
she
by
got that
Rocket
one
Fuel.
star.
She was one of the first that was promoted by Rocket Fuel. She made it
Yeah.
from captain to the position in no time. It was
Yeah,
absolutely
the
insane.
chief.
Yeah. So my point is, it's all part of a package of public speaking. You gotta speak well and know what you're talking about, especially in the role that she's occupying. You know.
So I want to say this. I disagree, John. I get it where she grew up, but we all grew up in New York City, and we all have New York City accents. And I can tell you this: I can turn it on, I can turn it off. We see actors have some of the heaviest. I mean, think of like Tom Hardy. He has a huge, heavy English accent, but when he does movies, you don't hear that accent. So the same thing has to come from NYPD leadership. I'm sorry. Being a good speaker is part of your job. If you want to be in the public eye, and as you rise in those ranks, you are more of a politician than you are a police leader. You have to have the ability to be a good speaker. You actually have to take the time out. If that means, just as I always talk about, you should be training, you're a police officer, you should be training in jiu-jitsu or boxing or lifting weights. You should be tactically ready. Same thing goes when you're in a position of leadership and you're in the public eye. You have to do what it takes to become a good speaker, and you have to drop the accent when you're speaking. You have to put the work into it. I don't think there's any excuse for that. We all have heavy New York City accents. But when it comes time, if I have to speak publicly, if I had to at a hearing just as that, I will take the time and slow down and make sure to pronunciate properly and to project my voice professionally. There's a different forum, right? If we're hanging out, we're having a couple of beers together, we're at a bar, we're talking, that conversation, those words will be far different than what we are going to say publicly. The subject, the substance may be, but how we portray it and speak to the public has to be on a professional manner. And you have to be a good speaker. I don't think there's any excuse for it. She's being paid handsomely. Spot on, brother. You're damn right. She's being paid handsomely for her job. Part of that is being a good speaker. And I'm sorry, drop the J-Lo talk when you're speaking to the public. There's no excuse for it. I can drop it too. We all grew up in the city. I can drop it when it's necessary. I know how to convene that, and so should she. So do you, John. So do you, Marlon. We know our audience. We know who we're talking to, when we're talking to. Same thing goes, right? If we were going to a school right now to speak to kids, it was Parent-Teacher Day, I'm not going to speak to the kids the same way I would speak to a room of adults. So we could all turn it on and turn it off. I think there's zero excuse for it.
No, I agree with you, but all I'm saying is like she can't she's not tuned in at all. She's not plugged in at all, and that's why it's coming out like that. Is because she doesn't. When the questions are asked, she's fumbling, dude. You know what I mean? She doesn't know, and I'm like, what is this position for? Like what? Like there's another almost $300,000 I saved in the budget right there. Yeah, we don't need a first deputy commissioner anymore. They have no function. They don't do anything. I don't need to pay someone $300,000 to run in 5Ks. Like I'm sorry, and wear an NYPD gear. Oh, we got retired guys that'll do that for free. You know, we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. We have young kids, retired guys. We have people that'll go out on their own time and do that. We don't need that position. I'll eliminate the first deputy position, commissioner position. They don't know what they're doing. They obviously were never in charge of the overtime. They're in charge of team takeovers and all this other stuff. They have no idea what they're doing. Get rid of the position. That's it. Have whoever handles it, have them speak. Bring that person up because they're obviously more plugged in. So there's that.
Hey John, you want to mention the school safety part? Or are you gonna play that part? I thought it's relevant to Tanya again.
Yeah, bring it up. Bring it if you got it ready. Bring it up.
Yeah, let me play
school
it.
safety agents and school.
So this is the question is about school safety, and well, just watch it. I'll talk about it after.
To school safety agents and school crossing guards, can you give us the new budgeted headcount for school safety agents and crossing guards?
Yes, I can. Okay. School safety agents were cut by 264 positions to 3,651. Does someone have school crossing guards in front of them? If not, I can get it here.
Yes.
Hold on, I have it. Do you have it? Okay.
Well, keep eyes on Tanya.
School, I don't see it here.
So we just recently hired a 94 in May, so that leaves us with 31 vacancies. The allocated budget is 2,309.
Christine, do you have the specific numbers for school safety agents? Sorry, for school crossing guards?
So I have 2,309 for the allocation. We just hired a class of 94 in May, so that leaves us with 31 vacancies.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah.
All right. Can you tell?
Yeah. What's my point here? Well, isn't Tanya in charge of school safety now?
Yeah.
Hasn't that been moved under her?
Yeah. The other thing that you missed in that one, though, is that when they go on further, when they go on further, not only is the head count of school safety down, but they lowered the overall head count, budgeted allotted head count too. And when she's asked about it, Tish, she gives a complete word salad on it. Well, we couldn't hire, so I had to remove those positions, and I got rid of those positions. And it's like, so what the numbers they gave you right there aren't really accurate, right? Because we're down a lot, right? Because if you're removing over 300 positions out of the budget, so like the whole thing it was like that whole segment was weird. But yeah, Tanya didn't know anything. She was fumbling through the paper. This is like, you put any one of us in charge of something, I'm going to be able to eat and breathe and sleep it. Like, it's, I know LaPetrie's a freak, but like, that's how you have to be in these positions. Like, you have to be that guy. You have to be that guy that sleeps in your office on Wednesday night, preparing for ComStat for Thursday. Like, that's who you have to be. You have to be the guy that watches these city council hearings when no one else is watching. There's two people watching the city council hearing and then breaking it apart. And then, a 7.5 hour hearing, you've ate it for 36 hours. Like, you have to be that guy if you're in that guy or girl, if you're in these positions. And she's clearly not in tune. I'm telling you, so I just saved another 300,000. Like, it's gone. Get rid of the first deputy commissioner position. It's useless.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah, we've seen this before. There was I forgot when it was, but we had a hearing where school safety was brought up again, and again, Tanya didn't know anything about it, even though it's her job. Okay, this is what ComStat, all those ComStats she had to go to as a commander, should have prepared her for it. So I don't understand.
Well, several episodes ago, we played that clip, so we'll have to find that clip and play it again, where Tanya actually testified at the city council. And it was Jessica Tish that actually put her on the spot. And they were talking about recruitment for school safety agents. The numbers were down and what they're doing about it. And Tanya just completely balked on that question. And it was completely a flop. And she went into, it was more about, she went to what they're doing to recruiting them. I think the question was actually about what are they doing to retain them? And just, her answers were just all over the place. It just shows you her head is not there. She was given the position. She holds that title, but she sure as hell doesn't hold the duties and responsibilities for it. There's no doubt about it. And we learned that billets in the NYPD mean nothing. She holds that billet. She holds that responsibility. She holds that crown, but she doesn't do anything with it. It's pure useless. And in my opinion, Jessica Tish saves her ass every time. Every time they have a city council hearing, she saves her ass. And I've been saying to myself, man, why does Jessica Tish keep her there? Why is she there? And those are some real questions. Why is she still there? I have a lot of thoughts on that. I kind of wonder, like, I don't know. Is it possible the feds told Jessica Tish to keep her there? Because I've been trying to make sense of this. It doesn't make sense. Tanya Consilla was responsible for overseeing the overtime that caused the major debacle that they supposedly had to change the system for, and that person's still in that place. I've been trying to ask myself, why is she still there? Why is she still there? It doesn't make any sense to me. I've been trying to think, why is she still there? And the only thing that is logical to me is maybe, I don't know, I have no idea. This is just my own idea. Maybe the feds are looking into it. Maybe the feds told her. I don't know. Because other than that, it doesn't make any sense to me. Why would she be there? If this was private industry, the same person that is overseeing a budget or overtime and failed to do their job and cost the city millions, that person, or if it was a private industry, cost the business millions, that person would be terminated. Why is she still there? She doesn't know her job. And listen, And as I said before, I do think being a good public speaker in a position of leadership is part of your job. I do think you can be trained to be a better public speaker. And how do you get more training? Is by being more knowledgeable in your position. More confidence and competence go together, right? The more competence you have in a position leads to more confidence. The more competence and confidence, the better public speaker that you will project yourself to be. And so I ask myself quite often, why is she still there? It just doesn't make any sense.
She's there because she's Black and Indian, and the Indian part is especially helping her because the city is trying to appeal to its growing South Asian population, and so she's there as a literal, I think, as a literal trophy piece or token piece for the city.
And I gotta tell you, I mean, I knew Tanya not well. I worked in the 120 precinct. John, so did you. And Tanya was in the 120 precinct. I remember her back then. I didn't know her well, but I did speak to her. I don't remember her having that heavy Bronx accent back then, to be honest. I don't. Maybe for some reason I just don't recall it. I find that to be something that was kind of new in the past couple of years. I remember her speaking with Eric Adams, and I said, I don't remember her speaking like that. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. Someone tell me if you know Tanya, if she spoke like that, fine. I just don't remember it. Do you, John? I mean, I didn't know her well, but I don't remember it being so heavy, having such a heavy Bronx J-Lo accent. I don't
know her well. I just brushed paths with her a few times. I don't know her well to really say it, but I don't know. But my point, and more like I'm just more infuriated is like, you don't know your job. Like that it's clear as day, man. It's been for years. We're watching it. Because like if you know it, you'll be able to spit it out through your accent and not through your accent. You won't be fumbling through papers up there. You just won't. You know what I mean? And it's clear as day, man. It's not one topic, it's every topic. And I guarantee if I brought up marathons, she would spit out the marathons. Oh, we're doing this, we got this going, we got that going. Like I'm not joking. Like I'm not kidding. Like it's not funny, dude. It's like, because it's like, you know, your pension got robbed, Marlon. Mine got diminished, robbed, taken away from our kids, from our future generations. And I'm like, it's infuriating to watch these people benefit, and they're idiots. They're complete morons. You know, I laugh. I really do. I laugh. I was like, you know what? Like, I love all the guys, the guys that are in the executive ranks that hate me. I really do, because it's like, dude, you know you're a moron. And then when you listen to the show, it shows you even more and more how much of a moron you are. And it's just a reminder of how ridiculous the system is. And the only reason you benefited from the system is because the system rewards incompetence. Like it doesn't look for talent. You know what I mean? And that's clear as day. You know, and,
hey, John,
and so,
John,
yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you, but let's turn to our sponsors.
Yeah, no, I got it. All right, people. Real quick though. I just, you know, if you guys, we do a lot of this on our own time, so we really want you guys, you know, and we love it. Like, but we put a lot of work into this. So if you guys could help us, we'd appreciate it. You know, so if you could help us, like when we're pushing our sponsors, if you could go there, we'd appreciate it. You know, we always appreciate the super chats, but you know, this is really like at this point, it's a futile enterprise. You know what I mean? We do it out of the goodness of our own hearts. So if you could help us, we'd really appreciate it. Help us help you. So time from a message from our partners over at Kalshi. So 2026 primaries are taking shape, and you can trade the biggest political races on Kalshi. On Kalshi, you can trade major primary election outcomes and the biggest political storylines as they happen. Will Gavin Newsom be the 2028 Democratic presidential nominee? Right now, Newsom is currently trading at 22%, meaning a $100 trade would pay out $431 if he becomes the Dem nominee. On Kalshi, you're trading against your peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code FINEST to get $10 when you trade 10. KALSHI, Kalshi. Trade on anything. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see calci.com/regulatory. And FYI, I use this for the next game. So I used it again for the next game, and I sold my position when the Knicks I sold my position when the Knicks went up and they took it. I kept buying in as they were down, and I sold it even prior to them winning, and I made money. And that's the cool thing about Calci. It's like you don't have to see your bet through. Like, you don't have to see that trade through. You could sell your position prior to it coming to a close.
Yeah, listen, it's actually all kidding aside. I mean, no, I think that's a good point John brought up, right? Listen, in order for us to keep supporting the cops and talk about politics and the work that we put into this, and what's necessary is that we also get support. And if you could go out there and make a bet, it really helps. We want to help, and obviously we need to keep working hard. So we need your help as well, and the engagement helps, and we also need you to if you support our sponsors, support us. It's a wheel that really keeps moving. But all kidding aside, I think it's super cool. Like I said, I did it myself. I think it's super cool that you could place that bet and then sell it halfway through. There's not many platforms like that, if any. I never seen anything that is like Calci. It's pretty cool. So check it out.
Yeah. All right, peoples. My visual zone, I see your comment, and it's definitely not getting read out. That's absolutely ridiculous. So that's absolutely ridiculous, because no one's putting a gun to your head to do anything. So that's just real hate right there. So no problem. We could talk about other positions in the city. I think that should be eliminated too. All right, where are we up to? We are 6/1/26. All right, I believe this is it right here. Okay. All right. This was a funny part. This to me was super funny. Wait, I want to make sure that this is correct. Yeah. Okay. This part was super funny to me. So this is Jessica Tisch. This is ComStat magic. Like, this is legitimate ComStat magic. LePetri has trained her well. You could see Chief LePetri staring over at her like, I prepped you for this. You better perform. This is it's insane. So this is Michael Kemper improved upon. So you ready for this? She's going to talk about how, earlier in the hearing, they talked about how the NYPD overtime budget continues to rise. But you're going to actually hear Jessica Tisch tell you how the overtime is actually at historic lows. So it is amazing. It was the funniest part. I'm not kidding. I think I listened to this like 20 times because I think it's so funny, dude. It's like, wait, we just talked for 20 minutes about how the overtime budget's up. It continues to rise, how you need the overtime, how to operate on this overtime. And then all of a sudden, you sprinkle a little ComStat magic on it. Overtime's actually had historic lows. Listen to this. It's hysterical.
Right, but projected for the last quarter
the
included.
projection is 1.013 billion, which is $91 million less than fiscal year 25, the same first 3 quarters. But for the first 3 quarters, which is $91 million less than fiscal year 25. So the full year projection is 1.013 billion, $91 million less than fiscal year 25. For the first 3 quarters that have been completed in fiscal year 26, we are down 10% in overtime compared to the first 3 quarters of fiscal year 25. And if you take out the transit overtime, which the governor pays for, and you put overtime spend in today's dollars, meaning in today's contract dollars, how much the cops are paid, the FY26 overtime spend is projected to be 6% lower than that historical average going back to 2016.
So if you just take out the transit money and then you just sprinkle a little bit of this in, we're actually at historic lows. So you got it. The governor puts the money in. Overtime's actually not up. It's your perception. I'm going to give you the reality. hysterical, dude. I was cracking up.
Yeah, they're actually telling you what they're doing to crime right now, what to CompStat numbers. Yeah,
That was amazing, by the way.
Mm.
You know what's pretty funny about that? It's almost like it's pretty funny how it's like that's money that's given by the governor. It's almost like, well, didn't Jeffrey Madry supposedly, wasn't the rumor that Jeffrey Madry used FEMA money to give out that that overtime to have a good time at one police plaza? That was the rumor, right? That was FEMA federal money. So why would that money even count then? I guess it doesn't even matter. This is hilarious. You gotta love the semantics. How when they give you crime stats, if we leave out 2020 and 2021, if we leave transit out, if we leave this out, why do we have to leave anything out? It's hilarious. You gotta love the semantics. It's great. So exactly that. And all of them were at historic lows. So if you leave out this homicide and that homicide, this crime, you're at historical lows with crime too. Welcome. This is CompStat magic at its best. And Jessica Tisch, she sure holds the crown for that.
Yeah.
Did you get that CompStat magic, Marlon? You liked it? So.
Yeah, that's what LaPetri spends his time doing now. Yeah.
Yeah, and now's my favorite city council person ever.
Yeah.
I didn't clip out every single part of hers, but it's always. I'm not even kidding. The minute they announce, next we're gonna go to council member Caban, I literally just hit record. I'm like, all right, I need to get all this. How long?
John, you know it's gonna be good, right?
It's always gold, dude. It's always solid gold. Like it's not even funny. It's always solid gold, bro. It's not even funny. So this is how she starts. This is how she comes into her cadence on like this is the beginning, literally the beginning of her testimony. It's so funny. So she's asking basically about broken windows. Jessica Tisch backs off of it, saying, "I don't believe in broken windows." Blah 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 blah. Whatever, but. He wants to know, I'm just going to let it play because it's ridiculous. We'll talk about it after. It's hysterical.
Commissioner, what evidence does the NYPD have that increased arrests for low-level offenses improve public safety outcomes?
To be clear, we are not looking to make increased arrests for low-level offenses. We give our officers a huge amount of discretion. Discretion starts with engagement. The Quality of Life Division was certainly not created to gin the number of low-level arrests.
Well, Commissioner, that's not my question. No, but that's not my question. So I just want to redirect for a second. What evidence does the NYPD? Because we have in prior hearings where you have testified and others.
I don't have evidence of it because that is not a stated goal. So I wouldn't look at that. The stated goal of the Quality of Life Division is to address the explosion of quality of life complaints that we have seen across every precinct and every district in this city.
And as a partner in public safety, what evidence do you have that broken windows, addressing broken windows offenses, low-level offenses improves public safety outcomes?
I told you I am not interested in going back to broken windows policing where you look to make you look for a low-level thing to find a higher level thing.
So I will say that the theory
to do is address. Can I just finish? You can have more time. What I'm looking to do.
Can I, Chair? Is that cool? The Commissioner's offering me more time.
Maybe like another minute, and then we'll go around. We'll definitely put you for round two.
What I am looking to do is address the explosion of 311 complaints that we have seen across every community in the city. And those complaints differ community to community.
Thank you. So what I want to say about this here is that either our goal has to be improve public safety outcomes or answer 311, be the one to answer certain 311 complaints simply because you get them. And what I think is important for us to analyze here is that there has been a 20-year meta-study analysis that debunks the relationship between disorder crime and using resources for broken windows policing generally. It was disproved. And even though you're saying it's not a stated goal, we have seen the Data Collaborative for Justice over a 4-year span from 21 to 24. So a sharp upsurge in arrest for level charges. A Gothamist article talked about a 3,000% increase in arrests for lying down or taking up more than one seat on the subway. and that at this point in the year, court cases for that offense in particular are already exceeding the pace of last year. So I just, those things don't make sense to me in terms of either you're improving public safety or doing the things, if you're data driven, to improve public safety, or just going to answer 311 calls simply to answer them and not improve public safety. But I want to ask this.
So she's obviously insane, right? She is crazy as they come, but she literally, that segment exposes how much power Jessica Tisch has. Because she literally is running the city council hearing. And that's why we say that it's theater, right? She literally said, we'll give you more time to the council. That's not how that works. Like, the speaker decides who's going to get more time and who's not going to get more time. And the speaker was basically like, yeah, okay, no problem. Yeah, we'll give you more time, Tiffany. Don't worry about it. And the thing is, I actually posted this, and I said to Tiffany, I said, you know, you want the data, it's there. It's called 1993 to 2018. When we deployed broken windows theory, crime fell. When we did it, the rest of the world followed, the rest of the country followed, police departments followed, and there was this omnipresence across the country that brought crime down nationally, not just locally. But we started that trend here in New York City. And that happened under Rudy Giuliani and Bill Bratton. And it was called the broken windows theory. So there's your proof. There's your proof. Take the crime numbers from 1993, coin them with 2018, and believe. And I'm not saying that 2018 we were still deploying broken windows. There were very few units in the NYPD that was still doing it. Overall, as a police department, we were no longer a proactive police department. But the 2018 crime numbers were a effect of that over a decade, almost nearly 2 decades of deploying broken windows theory. That's why those 2018 numbers were down there. And then we went away from it. And this is the result.
Yeah. So the following day, this was Tiffany Caban receiving a Best Actress award for her grandstanding at City Council. Yeah. This is Jimmy Kimmel giving her the Academy Award.
Congrats,
that was
Tiffany.
great, dude.
Yeah, you could always count on Tiffany Caban for some quality grandstanding at these city council hearings. You know, I mean, I had to slog through like 4 hours of that hearing. You know, well, it actually came out to like 6 hours as I was cutting videos on it. But I gotta say, when Tiffany got back on there, it kind of woke me up again. You know, so I'd like to thank her for keeping us entertained while watching these city council hearings, right? But yeah, she is kind of batshit, yeah, batshit crazy, you know. And even former Councilman Holden, he made a tweet about it too. I thought it was spot on. You know, her takes are so like crazy, you know. It's like I can't believe people actually elected this lady there, you know. She's completely out of touch with reality, you know, completely out of touch with reality. But you know, she's entertaining. That's for sure.
Dude, she's awesome. I gotta say, every time Tiffany Caban opens her mouth, I think of the movie, like, you know, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I'm like, every time I think of her, I think like, you know, just like insane minds, like, you know, crazy people that should be in a crazy house but are still intelligent. I'm like, I think of her right away. As soon as she opens her mouth, like, you're on the edge of your seat, like, what is she gonna say next? But to your point, John, because we were talking about it, man, Jessica Tisch is such a powerful person. People don't even realize she comes from the 43rd. Think about that, the 43rd richest family in the entire country. And think about it, New York City, the top 1% of millionaires and billionaires live in New York City. And those people cannot even come close to the Tisch family. That's how much money we're talking about. And money does equate to power. Jessica Tisch has so much power. She says, all right, I'll give you more time. She has so much power. It's insane. And it shows. The title of this show today is, do these city council hearings accomplish anything? And the reality is, does it? Because it's just pure theater. It's exactly what it is. It's just a show. It's a show on both sides. And ultimately, it doesn't go anywhere. Because some of these questions warrant investigation, some of these responses do, on both sides of city council, so the NYPD, and they fall flat in their face and they go nowhere. So we spend all this money, all these people are voted in, spend all this time asking these questions, and it's just useless. It doesn't go anywhere. It's absolutely city, but it's entertaining. I mean, I love it. It's entertaining. But this is just concept magic right in front of your face. I've been talking about intrusive police work for the longest time. Broken windows, intrusive police work, they're pretty much the same thing. And intrusive police work and broken windows, whatever term you like to use under that umbrella of cops, basically broken windows and intrusive police work, what does it mean? It means cops actually engaging people on low-level crimes to high-level crimes, trying to keep the public safe. Very simple. And exactly what John said, from 1993 till 2018. And I would say really 2014, when de Blasio came in office, we really tailed away from broken windows and started moving to this neighborhood coordination officer program. But it was such a strong presence in New York City that those numbers held strong till it started to dissipate, which is why I think it held strong to 2018. But you see units that, like anti-crime, that were here before they were disbanded in 2020, conditions unit, all these intrusive probation unit, burglary unit, all these plainclothes teams in the NYPD doing intrusive police work, uniform teams that are doing intrusive police work, kept crime down. It was effective. And Tiffany Caban knows damn well. And I'm surprised by that response by Jessica Tisch. I don't like the response at all, but that's the reality. We've moved away from broken windows, and it should be the goal. Broken windows, intrusive police work is the fabric and bedrock and foundation of policing. But Tiffany Caban is insane. Her questions are so left field. I don't know how she still stays there. Maybe people are just like, you know what, we put her in there because she's entertaining. But she's just insane. It's crazy. It's when she talks, like, oh my God. Batshit crazy. I can't believe this person is actually a politician in New York City. That's insane. And the most important economic wheel in the entire world, New York City, she's on the city council. Just think about that.
Yeah, absolutely insane. And then Michael Gerber rears his ugly head, and ugly, I do mean that literally and figuratively, because he for no reason at all, he just interjects about the protest settlement agreement. Now, the only people that talk about the protest settlement agreement is the Finest Unfiltered. I post about it ad nauseum because it honestly has weakened the NYPD stance, and it has weakened public safety in New York City. Like, so I post about it ad nauseum. It's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. And here's what a civilian lawyer has to say about the protest settlement agreement.
If I may also just the tiered system that we have in the protest settlement speaks to this as well, right? So to everything that the chief of department was just saying, the police commissioner was saying, and then one thing that has been a product of the protest settlement is thinking through, okay, how many officers do we actually need to do this responsibly, appropriately, consistent with the settlement? And I think that's actually been a real benefit of the protest settlement.
So the protest settlement agreement had nothing to do with that segment whatsoever. He just interjected himself into that and interjected that. And I feel like a lot of times it's done to really push back at the things that are being said about it by this network. And it really pissed me off because it makes absolutely no sense, dude. It's like what Gerber just said to you was that the same thing that Tish is saying to you. Right? She continues to say, like, there was no overtime accountability. There was no overtime tracking before her. What Gerber's trying to say is that the NYPD never thought about the resources that they need at protest until the protest settlement agreement. So it's a good thing we actually had to think about the number of cops we might need. And like, dude, you deserve a smack right off the back of your ugly head, because that is so far from the truth. Like I said, originally when the NYPD was founded in 1845, it was founded as a reactionary force to quell periods of civil unrest, riots, for crowd control, to be able to properly control protests, because there was a lot of friction at that time, you know, just coming off the draft riots and all this other stuff that were happening. So that's, I mean, we were the cream of the crop prior to Michael Gerber ever rearing his ugly head into the NYPD. So I don't know what he's talking about. It was absolutely ridiculous. And here's Gerber at the protest center, at a protest that is being controlled and oversaw by the protest settlement agreement. Now we have a deputy commissioner, civilian lieutenant, deputy civilian commissioner and he has to get involved in the protest. Look how great it is. No one even knew who the deputy commissioner of legal matters was 6 years ago. Now all of a sudden these idiots are out at every protest and they're getting involved in the mix. Look, he's got to get involved. That's how weakened our posture has become. Did you ever see that before? A deputy commissioner of legal matters having to actually physically police a protest. That's a result of the protest settlement agreement. That's as a result of that tiered response that's weakened the NYPD's protest posture. Great job, Mike.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions about that exchange because if you watch it, Tish looks in his direction. I'm not, I wonder if Tish was looking at him or the lady next to him. But like, I'm like, I was thinking to myself, like, why is a deputy commissioner of legal matters, basically the department's chief lawyer, interjecting about operational manpower, and kind of just doesn't make any sense to me, and even more so, why is he praising the protest settlement agreement when we know how much it's hampered like NYPD commanders and cops themselves? You look at all these incidents and you're seeing, in that incident you saw Gerber himself trying to hold back the crowd, but how many incidents have we seen where you have NYPD chiefs, besides the lieutenants and captains? Now you're seeing chiefs having to get in there and throw the cuffs on people or push back the crowd. And that's something I never saw back in the old days. You never saw that. All these white shirts having to get like hands on. When a white shirt had to get hands on, things were really getting out of control. But now you see that regularly, and to me, that's kind of crazy. I mean, you're seeing 1- and 2-star chiefs getting involved there. We've seen Chief Edwards in the latest incident, maybe 2 weeks ago, at the I think it was at Hunter College. You saw him jumping in there and pushing back the crowd too, and that, to me, that's absolutely insane that that's happening nowadays. But it's all because of the protest settlement agreement. So why is he interjecting here and telling you how good it is?
I want to discuss the protest settlement agreement. But before I do that, I just want to address one of our friends and listeners, Peter Powell's 3703, one of our friends and listeners. How you doing, brother? He says, Eric, stop saying intrusive. Let's call it proactive policing, real police work. So I want to say why I refer to it as intrusive police work, and maybe we could connect here. And I think, so the reason why I don't refer to it as proactive policing, I heard that term throughout my career. I don't like that term because to me, proactive policing is subjective, because you could say attending community meetings, traffic enforcement, going out, to basketball games, community events with kids. That could be considered proactive policing, right? You're being proactive in what you're doing. But to me, intrusive police work is about engagement. It's about questioning. It's about enforcement. It's about working under the case of people versus the board, and which I think is necessary to keeping crime down, right? To being intrusive on crime control. So that's why I use that word intrusive. I think intrusive, in my opinion, is the best verbiage when it comes to policing, and that's the best form of policing. That's my opinion. You might disagree, but to me, proactive, that term can be proactive, can be anything. Yeah, I go to, community affairs goes to attend community meetings quite often. That could be considered proactive. So that's why I use that term. Now, when it comes to the protest settlement, I want to say this, and I agree with you, John, spot on. When I saw that, immediately I thought he's coming to the defense of Jessica Tisch, because John and I did an episode on the protest settlement a few years back already. I was living in Malaysia at the time. And we actually did a segment on the protest settlement at the time where Eric Adams was supposed to veto the bill from the council. We did it before he even had an opportunity to veto that bill. We did an episode on it, and we've sounded on the horn numerous times. And we have been the only ones on this network have addressed the failures of the protest settlement, why most people weren't paying attention. So to me, and we've actually been in opposition to the posture that Jessica Tisch claims New York City should hold. We've also put credence to it by saying that the actions by Aaron Edwards were not heroic, but in fact a failure. But instead, Aaron Edwards, the chief, is being awarded with the Medal of Valor. Think about that, how it's been watered down. He's getting the Medal of Valor. In my opinion, that's just a deflection from the failures of the protest settlement. And that's why I think the Gerber baby interjected himself and gave that response.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had just done a post on it prior to him making this statement, and that's why I was like kind of like taken back why he just out of nowhere brought it in. Because for those of you that aren't familiar with the protest settlement agreement, what it does is it removes arrest authority from lieutenants, cops, sergeants, and detectives. It's dangerous, super dangerous. So what does that mean? That means that a police officer, a detective, a sergeant, and lieutenant cannot make an arrest for certain crimes that this settlement has deemed as red light offenses. They need the authority of a captain. If any of you know how it works, that details. I mean, you're not seeing a captain standing with everyone. They're in charge of a large amount of sergeants and lieutenants and cops and detectives, right? So they're not right there. So just let's take, for example, all of the protests that we're seeing now. If somebody like spray paints Free Palestine on a building right in front of somebody, right in front of a cop, sergeant, or detective, they can't make that arrest as per the protest settlement agreement unless a captain approves it. It says it right here. Practice by which specific offenses referred to red light offenses require the approval of a captain or above uniformed member of service, the approval of a captain or above before a uniform member of service may make an authorized arrest during a First Amendment activity. These are stipulated: riot, inciting riot, obstruction of governmental administration, violation of emergency orders, disorderly conduct, trespass, criminal mischief, third and fourth, pedestrian on roadway, unlawful assembly. Meaning any bad actors or bad agitators at these protests or parades, police officers basically have no arrest authority under the rank of captain. Super dangerous. And so I had put that out the day prior to this, and then he just like for no reason interjects that. And I'm like, that is absolutely ridiculous. What you're trying to say is, no, it's actually a good thing because now we count the amount of cops we have. It's like, what are you talking about? We've been doing that since 1845. We've been super good at it since after 9/11, like on point. And even in the 90s, NYPD was really good at it because there was a lot of things, the Crown Heights riots, Yusuf Hawkins. There was a lot of things that happened in New York where they really honed in and strengthened their protest posture a lot.
John, I thought that was the dumbest response I've ever heard, because I don't care what yes, especially policing, you talk about manpower. When I was in the military, you always talk about manpower, right? How many guys do you need for this specific task, this specific assignment? Forget about even the military or policing, anything. If you worked at Home Depot, they would say, well, how many guys do you need to work in the paint aisle? How many people need to work in lumber? How many people need to work in electrical? How many people need to work in garden? You always discuss manpower. Every organization talks about what manpower is, how many people are necessary to do a job, right? When it comes to cost, and especially in the NYPD, we always talk about manpower. How many cops do we need to man a specific assignment or task to make sure the job gets done and what's cost effective? So that was the stupidest response I've ever heard. That's been going on since the beginning of time. That is every organization, not just the NYPD. That was just pure silly. That he said this statement. Here's somebody with a law degree. Keep in mind that Gerber baby gave this statement that it was some type of revelation. Like, wow, we're discussing manpower. No shit. You do that every day. A cop on patrol. You go. How many sectors do we have to work today? How many people do we have working the precinct today? There's some event going on. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, John. It was absolutely silly that we paid this guy to be attorney for the NYPD. Silly. Just absolutely stupid. That was the dumbest response I've ever heard.
Yeah, the average Joe wants to know if anyone's seen Turco. Nobody's seen Turco, Monroe, or Monahan. They are missing in the wind. They were fighting back against Mondani's agenda as they're crawling up his ass behind the scenes. Cowards, they should all be removed from their positions. Absolute disgusting sellout cowards. You know, absolutely disgusting. You know, and like I said, all of you get your bylaws. All of you get your bylaws. If you want us to store it for you, we'll store it. If you want us to make them publicly available, we'll also do that. Like there is no rule that says this shouldn't be publicly available to everybody. Absolutely disgusting the way these three phonies have acted. Sellouts. They should be treated worse than everybody.
Here's the thing, right? Because we've been sounding the horn. We spoke about this for almost 4 years, talking about the unions, and I really believe that when it came time towards the end of my tenure of my career, if I would have listened to the advice of the unions, I probably would have been terminated today. I would have been a casualty. But I did everything in opposition to what they told me to do. I did everything opposite, and I was able to retire on my own choice, unlike what people have the rumors and lies that have been on there. Retired by my own choices. I was actually off at Intel in the squad, and I decided to retire. But I didn't listen to the unions. Their advice was actually terrible, to be honest. But my question is at this point is, what is it going to take to change, John? Marlon, we've been sounding the horn saying, look, the unit didn't defend Marlon. The unit didn't defend John. They didn't defend me. They're not defending the cops right now. All they talk about is going to courtrooms, packing courtrooms. Like, when are we going to say enough is enough and say, wait a minute, why are these guys, they want to stay on the job till 65 so bad? Like, what is going on for union board members? Like, how great is that job? Why aren't they doing appearances? Like, what is it going to take till people actually say enough is enough? Or cops are just going to say, it is what it is and just keep accepting it. Like, at what point do you say, wait a minute, we're giving these guys money. They're making millions of dollars. At what point are we going to say enough is enough? When are you actually going to show us representation? When are people going to say, you know what, I'm not paying union dues? Do you think that day is going to come?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know when that'll be because a lot of cops have Stockholm syndrome right now. And, the SBA put out this about the Tier 2A pension enhancement and how it's now awaiting the governor's signature. So I think they're already priming the narrative for when they push for when they start trying to convince membership to go along with pension deferment. And I think it may still pass. Membership may still go along with it because most cops, are not paying attention or not aware of what's going on with their pension and the overall economy, or even understand fully about what inflation means to their pension long term. But I don't know what it's gonna take, and I can't say that even in all the preaching we do on this show, if that's ever going to wake up cops. It's just the way things are, unfortunately. I mean, think of it for a second. If they didn't wake up when government tried to force a medical experiment on you years ago, what is it going to take? I mean, seriously, like guys completely ignore the fact that happened and just move along with their life. Like, no, it didn't happen. And it's to me, it's kind of insane that guys have completely forgotten about that and moved on. So I don't know what's gonna take. But just to go back on what I said earlier, I made a mistake. It wasn't at Hunter University. This was on May 5th at the Park East Synagogue, where there was a protest about something about Israel. But the point is how Gerber is out of line with his comments because look, this is Chief Edwards here, Remember a couple. This
failing to supervise again, like another failure.
Medal of Valor, by the way, Marlon.
Huh?
Medal of Valor recipient.
Yeah. So you guys who aren't aware, Edwards and his sergeant and a couple of the guys involved in the in apprehending the individual who tossed the bomb at Gracie Mansion maybe a month or so ago. They're now receiving a Medal of Valor. That's a whole other discussion for us to go into about. I personally don't think it rises to the level of Medal of Valor. I certainly think Grant should have been given a gold shield or put on track sooner, but I don't think this deserves to get a Medal of Valor for anybody involved in it. But the whole point of me bringing this up is that, look, this is Edwards here physically having to push back the barrier against the crowd because the crowd was trying to, break through the barrier to the synagogue. They eventually did, by the way. But the point here is that the protest settlement agreement does not benefit anyone, and membership and the commanders should be speaking out about this, and their unions, even more so, should be pushing back against the department and against statements like that because again, this is their membership having having their work made even more harder because of that.
Yeah, it's I know we're going to go into it further. And we'll discuss it one of these days. But him being a Medal of Valor recipient is a complete deflection about the actual event itself, right? I think it's misdirection on purpose, intentionally, in my opinion, to have you focus on the actions of Edwards and focus on the actions of the sergeant and not focus on the failures of that incident, because ultimately it was a failure. 2 IEDs were present at Gracie Mansion, which is a complete disaster. That, in my opinion, that's a success on their part. They just didn't detonate, which is pure luck. And Edwards is being honored as a Medal of Valor recipient. It completely waters it down. Think about Medal of Valor. When I think about Medal of Valor, I think about some brave, heroic event. He jumped over a barrier. He jumped over a barrier, ran towards Officer Grant Polgarin, and when he did, he tried to stop Grant Polgarin from making the arrest because he went to ABLE training, in my opinion. He went to ABLE training where they learned to stop the aggressive cop, and that's what he did. So the only one that should have been awarded, in my opinion, and not with a Medal of Valor, is with a gold shield, and that should have been Officer Grant Polgarin. Not going on track, he should have been awarded a gold shield. And I don't think that Edwards, I'm not saying it because he's a chief. I don't think there should be any award there. Your job is to go to danger as a police officer. Yes, that is your job. He didn't do anything above and beyond. They had no idea what was going on. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, it's just theater, dude. They watered down the detective shield already, but yet they can't give one to Grant. He has to wait 18 months. And then, they're going to water down all of these medals as well. And I personally think that Grant was one of the few people who knew what the hell was going on. So, yeah, I would support a Medal of Valor for him, but not for some guy who had no idea what was going on because he was able to hop over a barrier and then figured it out when it was way too late and still didn't. And again, it was his job to deploy the proper amount of resources, and he didn't do it because, again, we talk about how this protest settlement agreement, yes, it is restrictive, but there are ways around it. There are absolutely ways around it when it comes to safety, and they're not doing that. And then they're going to try to sell you safety slop, which they do to Phil Wong here. This is just pure, utter slop here. Now, last city council hearing, every city council member, including the defund the police city council members, were all asking, what are our staffing numbers for? Like, where are our staffing numbers at? And I know what the staffing numbers are in most precincts, and I'll tell you, they're in half of what they were in 2019. So now all of a sudden they don't want to put these numbers out because the NYPD now all of a sudden, they didn't tell you this last public safety hearing. They haven't told you this in any other prior public safety hearings. They had no problem putting these numbers out for years and years and years and decades. But now all of a sudden it's a safety issue. And honestly, I think Phil gave them the out here, and it was wrong. I would have never gave them the out on this. This is absolutely ridiculous. You're going to watch Phil Wong ask about the manpower, and then you're going to see Tish, and he's going to give him an out, and then Tish and Gerber all jump on that out, and they say how it's a safety issue. They can't put it out. They can't put it out on a granular level. But the real issue is that, look, it wouldn't be a safety issue if these precincts were properly staffed. It wouldn't be a safety issue at all. So listen to this exchange, and honestly, again, it's theater to me, dude. Because you're not getting more cops in your precinct if this is what happens. Like, you're not getting all your precincts that were cut in half, they're going to remain cut in half, and that's it. And honestly, if this is the level of oversight that's given to the New York City Police Department, they might as well cut your precincts in half again. And then you're going to have to be the one that's going to have to answer to your constituents and try to get reelected. Because they're setting you up for failure, dude. They're setting you up for failure. If I'm the commanding officer, and you give me a half-assed roster, I'm gonna let it be known that I am working with scraps here. I need this corrected ASAP. You have no problem putting people in community affairs. Happy Pride Month to Pat Gordon and Eric Adams and a lot of other people. So I know you got no problem throwing all your guys up in community affairs, putting them in 1PP, put them in precincts where they got to answer jobs and be sergeants and lieutenants and all this other stuff. Watch this exchange. It's infuriating to listen to this.
Is there a department policy against publicly disclosing precinct by precinct staffing levels? And if so, what is the rationale? Because my constituents regularly ask about these figures, and they look and there's nowhere to be published.
So the way the city council set up the law, we have various disclosure obligations, various wide range of staffing data that we are required to disclose, except to the extent that it will endanger public safety or endanger our officers. And so as we provide a very wide range of data regarding staffing and deployment. However, as it gets more and more granular, more and more specific, we do get more and more concerned about the safety aspect of this. If bad actors know precisely how we have staffed at a very granular level, that allows them to make strategic or tactical decisions that can be incredibly dangerous for the public or for our officers. So that's the balance that we're constantly striking. I do want to emphasize that the city council set up the law in this way. That is maximum transparency consistent with public safety and the safety of the officers.
Which is why we can, when we talk about publicly about staffing numbers or report publicly on staffing numbers, to do it on the borough level. But when you have asked in the past, and your colleagues have asked in the past about your staffing numbers, about concerns about staffing, we are very transparent with you in those discussions, take the feedback, and then assign officers accordingly.
Okay.
So what happened there was Tish just served them up a platter of slop, like John says.
Here's a slop right here. That deserves a spot on.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll take another half of my precinct cut in half again.
Yeah. Hey, Phil Wong, you can have more time too. You have more time with your bullshit. You gotta love it.
Yeah.
You know what's funny about this whole thing? They claim that giving out the data for a roster is leads to the vulnerability of the safety of the cops. What about the fact that cops getting taunted on a daily basis and they're pretty much doxxed with their names out there in the 50A? So that part's not a safety issue to the cop, right? But the manpower is the most ridiculous thing. I mean, so if you gave out the number by borough, how is that any difference? If someone said, wait a minute, okay, let's do the math. There's 500 cops in the borough of the Bronx, and you have 12 precincts. Let's give an estimated average per precinct, and you could probably get a good idea of how many cops are in each precinct. It's the most ridiculous response. And what's more ridiculous is that the city council always allows them to give these dumb responses and doesn't fire back. Why? In my opinion, I think they don't fire back because they have no idea what they're talking about. So these questions, in essence, are useless, because if you don't have any knowledge, or at least do your homework on why manpower is important, or anything to combat that answer, to have a metric of measures of standards to make a comparison, then the question is useless. And that's what we see every time in these city council hearings. And that's why the title to this, I think, is so on point. It's just perfect. Is, do these city council hearings accomplish anything? Because based on his question and the response he got, did it accomplish anything? Whether the data is flawed or not. And we know it's flawed. And we know there's not 35,000 cops. We know it's a complete lie. The resignations are insane. Why are they accepting it? It's because they don't know. They don't even know. They don't know how it works. These are, in my opinion, these city council members are really lacking knowledge to understand city agencies, especially the NYPD, which is the most versatile and most important agency to the function of the city.
Yeah, I wonder how prepared do you think they actually are? Those councilmen are before they have these hearings. Now, I got to give Phil Wong credit, because he's just about one of the few that I heard actual good questions there. You know, besides most of the other people on there are just grandstanding. You know, okay, it's just grandstanding, like Tiffany Caban we talked about, but in some of those questions, like Natasha Williams and forgot the other one, maybe Selena Brooks, it's like, how prepared are you for these hearings? You know, because you're giving off the impression that you don't know anything about the police department. or
Yeah, that's my point, Marlon. Like I would, if we were on the city council, if we're going to have a question, we're going to have supportive responses ready for what ammunition comes towards us, right? So if I was Phil Wong, then my recommendation, Phil Wong, is if you ask that type of question, if she's, that she always claims to be data driven, right? Jessica Tisch, when she was commenced as and she was appointed as the police commissioner, she started out by saying she's data driven, and that's going to be the ultimate direction of the NYPD. So based on the data, if you have it, you should say, okay, if we have those borough numbers and we do an average per precinct, this is the numbers that we have, and tell us what are the numbers they're supposed to have. Tell us where we fell short, and tell us, are these the numbers that are up to par? And that's the problem. I just don't think they do their homework and have a real understanding. And here's the other problem, is they don't collaborate with actual cops, with actual people with police experience to understand what's going on so that they can actually help. You can't help if you have no knowledge. And if you have zero knowledge, your questions aren't going anywhere.
Well, I think, I think like when we talk about Wong, I think that he is plugged in and he works with his precincts. When you look at Areola, same thing. Like they all plugged in. They're just really in between a rock and a hard place right now. They're in between a rock and a hard place, but it doesn't mean that you should accept the slop either, because I don't think Holden ever accepted the slop either.
Never.
There was another segment on the numbers, and I'm not going to play that part because we're just running out of time here. But Areola asks Tish, she goes, "Look, you're saying crime's down, but my constituents is saying crime's up. Could we get crime broken down by council district?" And what Tish responds to is not that question. She responds to, we could probably give you the numbers by council district, meaning the granular number of cops. So here's the thing. It doesn't matter. Let's look at the granular number of boroughs, like a borough cops, and take Staten Island, for example, where you have less cops now than you did in 1960. Is releasing that data public safety? Is that releasing that data a safety hazard? Yeah. But is that data being reality, the bigger safety hazard? Yeah. And what are you doing to change that hazard? Nothing. You're going to city council hearings and you're lying, and you're feeding slop to the city council members, and there's no oversight coming from the chair. So it's ridiculous, dude. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, I'll agree. Yeah, no, that could definitely be a problem with safety. It's a problem with safety because you're not staffing them properly, and you're not staffing your boroughs properly. And then she doubles down and she goes deeper. And when she talks about it, she's like, you guys actually didn't lose cops. We put ECT into this, into a different thing, and all. And it's like, we're not talking about that. We're talking about when council members are asking about cops specifically, they're not talking about specialized units. They are talking about patrol, your patrol strength, your numbers of precincts. When their constituents call 911, are they going to get a response? Or are we going to divulge and we're going to just go downwards, and we're going to turn into Be Heard, where we only respond to 7% of the 911 calls? Because that's where we're headed. That's exactly where we're headed. So this is another thing that taxpayers should be up in arms about. Areola asked Tish about funding, because basically they're going to lose the federal funding. I have two clips on this. I'll play Areola's first, and this is actually backwards. Areola goes second. So Tish in this clip downplays what she previously said. And I'll play that clip after, but this is Areola's asking her about the federal funding. So there's a lot of counterterrorism funding that comes from the federal government. However, Trump said that he's not going to give this funding to sanctuary cities and sanctuary states going forward. So Kristi Noem pulled that funding. So what Tish and New York City have decided is that, well, you know what? We're going to be a sanctuary city and state. We put illegals in this city first. So if, the taxpayer just has to foot the bill for that counterterrorism funding, because this is a necessity, we can't do without it, pays for DOS, pays for a lot of different things, pays for intel, pays for all these things in the budget. So we need all of these items in the budget. So because we're going to put illegals ahead of you, your police department's going to cost you a lot more money, because we're no longer going to get that federal funding. And it's not a problem this year, but it'll be a problem when Jessica Tisch is no longer the police commissioner in a few years. and nobody cares because it's illegals first. Listen to what's said here.
A lot of your funding comes from federal grants, and you're going to continue to fight to get those federal grants. But there's some language that precludes you from being able to apply for those federal grants. And I can only imagine that that includes working fully with federal law enforcement agencies.
A lot of it is a lot of the problematic language for us conflicts with the sanctuary city law.
Correct. So how will you manage that or navigate that when there is a conflict there? Because you certainly need that funding.
So there's two separate things going on. The first are the grants, which tend to be the much smaller grants. They do not represent a majority of the counterterrorism grant funding we get, where we have that conflict with sanctuary city law and we are not eligible to apply. The more meaningful chunk of money is not about eligibility, a conflict between sanctuary city law and eligibility requirements. It's the Department of Homeland Security's allocation levels to New York State, which were dramatically cut under Secretary Noem, and we were hopeful that the president would overrule. Unfortunately, we have not seen those.
And they were dramatically cut because of sanctuary city law. So it's like a complete word salad, dude. Like we don't care about yous. We care about illegals.
Yeah. Now going back to the Be Heard program, right? I just want to, isn't this, the fact that the government is cutting, grants to the NYPD, isn't this more of a reason for like administrators like Tish to be critical of the Be Heard program and its metrics for success and failure and all of that? That the Be Heard now is what is it, $35 million is budgeted for that. But keep in mind, Mamdani's community department, Office of Community Safety, the budget is what, 250 million. So think of it for a second. We showed you a clip earlier where Tish told you that there hasn't been any discussions about their role yet, right? And yet that office is budgeted with money that the NYPD could use, considering the feds are going to be cutting the grants to the NYPD. So isn't that why she should be critical of that and should be calling out that nonsense? And yet, she clearly told us that she isn't aware of what's going on there. It just baffles me.
Yeah, I agree, especially Jesse Tish, knowing how much power money is equivalent to, especially being part of the 43rd richest family in the entire country, how much power her family has because of the money that you have. You'd think she would push more in opposition of sanctuary cities, because being a sanctuary city and a sanctuary state bars you from getting that funding from the federal government. You think you would be in more opposition because you know that money that you would get would give you the power. And you would know that the money spent on Be Heard is not worth it. The money spent on Be Heard, and as I said, if my analogy is it's just one tool in the toolbox, right? If you had an entire toolbox, you had a saw, you had all these tools in one big box, it cost you so much money. Be Heard is just one wrench in that toolbox, and that is that you talk about that 35 million is a failure. So that's another indication that the entire box of Office of Community Safety is going to be a failure also. This whole thing falls on its face. In the end, it just costs money. So the city pays for it, the city residents pay for it, the taxpayer pays for it, and the city agency workers that bust their ass to get a pension are paying for it because they want to dip into your pension and be a sanctuary city and a sanctuary state, not getting funding from the state. But the money that they do have, spend it on silly things that don't work, such as Be Heard and such as the Office of Community Safety. Just this whole thing, like I said, I always talk about these politicians suffering from the Munchausen syndrome because they cause the problems and then they want to treat the symptoms. They're causing the problems that there's no money, but then they want to treat the symptoms. Well, shame on you, because they cause the same problems that we're experiencing. This is absolutely ridiculous. It's a joke. The whole thing's laughable. It really is. this whole Be Heard, Office of Community Safety, these incentives that just don't work, but yet they keep throwing money at it. Again, I told you, if you bought a $100,000 car and it didn't operate after a week, you wouldn't put more money into it. You would get rid of it. It's very simple. And through all these questions with City Council, not one person, as John said earlier, I agree. Now, one person, wait a minute. We need to get rid of this whole thing right now. We spent all this money. You don't have enough money to do the job. We need to figure this out. Now, one person said, let's ask questions and let's just keep going. That's all they do.
All right. Let's speed this up because we're running out. All right. We got 2 more clips and then we'll get out of here. We got a lot more clips than that, but we'll hit them next week. So this is her prior to that on the terrorism funding.
Workers, that this funding cut doesn't create an immediate threat, certainly not for the World Cup or this summer, but it does pose a sort of an existential threat 2 years from now, and it does need to be corrected. But as to the rest of that question, Christine?
Yeah. So the cut for the Homeland Security grant funding is 40%. So we had expected we would get about 89, and we're getting only 53 of that. As the commissioner mentioned, the port security grant, which we've traditionally received, we did apply for that. We did not receive it. That's usually about 6.5 million. And then there were over a dozen smaller grants that we didn't apply for. We wouldn't have necessarily received funding for all of them, but they range from $200,000 to over $6 million. Cumulatively, had we gotten the maximum for all of them, it would have been about 19 million. And because of the existing terms of conditions and guidance from our legal and the law department, a determination was made that we could not make those certifications, therefore we could not apply. So as the commissioner said, we're able to work within our existing resources now to make sure there's no.
So that's it. They're willing to accept less funding to maintain sanctuary city law. And that's it. And the height of a budget crisis, it's okay. Don't give us any more funding. It's fine. We'd rather take on illegals.
Yeah, I think the budget, we can actually have an entire episode on the stuff that was mentioned in there. And if you dig deep into it, because there was there was a question earlier by Councilwoman Ung. I think it's Sandra Ung. And she asked about the capital budget of the NYPD and how it seems front loaded. I think basically that it was up to like 400. I think the exact amount escapes me now, but it was like very high for the current years for 2026, but like down to like 40 million by like I believe 2029. I'll show the clip if we don't have time today. I'll show it next week. But I think that relates to this in that down the road, they're foreseeing budget issues down the road. And again, and a tighter budget down the road. And again, this goes back to why they should be, why they keep going along with these programs that are hurting the city. Why they keep going along with this push for illegals in the city and sanctuary city status, at when it's really hurting them and it's hurting the bottom line of the city.
Well, here's the problem also, right? So Jessica Tisch has testified in the past recently that about 6.12 billion or 6.2 billion, I think it is 6.2 billion a year is the fiscal budget for the NYPD. And actually most of that money doesn't go to equipment. It goes to actually just salaries, overtime, actually mostly personnel. I think over 90% of the 6.2 billion approximately goes towards personnel cost. So in the grand scheme of things, when City Council discusses the funds, right, 230 million is not really much in comparison to 6.2 billion. So I think that's where they're kind of making their argument. But in the end, 230 million is 230 million that has gone to waste. Now, if that 230 million showed extreme value, then I could see expanding on it. But that 230 million, when we talk about going towards Be Heard and Office of Community Safety, is a complete waste. Well, that's a lot of money that could have went to personnel costs to make the apparatus better than what they have. I mean, because ultimately, this is a lot of overlapping. The idea of having Be Heard and Office of Community Safety not having the police respond when the police might have to respond anyway, and in the end, it actually becomes more costly and more cost ineffective, has a lapse on response times. And that, to me, it's just it's a huge problem. On the grand scheme of things, 230 million of 6.2 billion is not much. But when you look at the value, what you lack out of it, it's a huge number.
Yeah, and this will be the last clip for today. We'll get in anything that's super important about the PD next week when we talk about FD and Department of Corrections. But this is the last point I just think is important to highlight here. And we're being told that, in fact, law enforcement is not a profession in decline, especially the NYPD. We're being told they have no problem recruiting people, that retention is fine. They're at historic hiring levels. We're at the head count, the properly allotted head count in the NYPD. We can't tell you what that is because, safety reasons. We can't tell you how many people are staffed in your precincts, safety reasons, And then the last show we did on public safety, I spoke about how Lincoln Ressler in particular would beat up the entire Adams administration about response times, and we're not hearing it here. And again, all of a sudden, miraculously, now all of a sudden, Lincoln Ressler cares about response times again. We haven't heard it since Jessica Tisch stepped in. And so all of a sudden, it brings it up again, I believe, performance theater on Lincoln's part, but I don't think he actually made the call to Jessica to let her know, because listen to her response. Listen to what she says. And her response contradicts everything that's been said around retention, around hiring, around staffing levels. Listen to this.
To me, the critical crimes in progress, end to end, we're looking at 9 minutes and 10 seconds. Prior to the pandemic, 6 minutes and 44 seconds. And the times prior to the pandemic had been very consistently in that 6 minute plus range. We're now looking at something that's much higher. There has been some improvement, but we still have a ways to go. Commissioner, what's the plan to address this?
I think it's hiring up to head count. We need to get the number of people. For too many years, the department had authorized headcount and then did nothing with it, meaning didn't hire people to fill those vacancies. And those same people say that it's terrible that we haven't hired 5,000 additional officers. Okay. Separately, I am confident that we are going to see the fruits of our hiring of these 4,000 additional officers come to bear starting next fiscal year, when they will be in precincts responding to 911 calls for service. Right now, all of these new rookie officers are doing their first year, 18 months of training on foot posts, but they are not in precincts responding to 911 calls for service. And starting in June, we are going to be moving the first tranche of them into those assignments. So I hope to start to see 911 response time come down as a result.
I appreciate that.
So, actually, we don't have enough cops. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, basically, if you watch that hearing, you notice that same question was asked multiple times by different council men, in different forms, right? Lincoln Ressler asked it, Councilman Wong asked it, Councilwoman Areola asked it, and who is the other one that asked it? Yes, Councilman Banks asked it too, about coverage in their particular precincts and manpower. They didn't ask it the same way, but it all amounts to the same question about manpower. In fact, Councilman Banks even asked about the response times in the 7-5 precinct and how it's so large. And he inquired about getting a satellite office in the southern part of the command. And the reason why I mentioned the budget last go around was because I forgot if it was Tish or the lady next to her. I forgot her name, but they basically said we don't have money in their capital budget for that, right? But the point here is that the elephant in the room here is not just about the shrinking budget right? And about the fiscal problems, but it's about the manpower, and coverage in these precincts. And it's constantly being asked and it's constantly being invaded by Tish. But that is the elephant in the room, the fact that there is not enough cops. And we've talked about it many times on the show that what their plans can never be realized because there's not enough cops. In fact, they ended that hearing talking about tow trucks, giving officers tow truck qualifications in order to tow vehicles inside the precinct itself, rather than having to call outside units. I'm assuming they mean the Q teams having that responsibility also. And when I saw that, I thought to myself, well, that's a good idea, but where you're going to find the manpower to do that, okay? Because those precincts are short as it is right now, right? And what was I going to say? Yeah, I'll get back to it. But the bottom line here is that Tish fed them slop here, and the elephant in the room is that there's not enough cops on the job right now.
Yeah. Look, I get it. I don't expect the city council to have the complete nuances of law enforcement profession, but they have to be able to support some of the questions and actually combat some of the responses they received. And for instance, when Gerber Baby and Jessica Tish said they can't disclose the manpower because of safety reasons, a simple response could have been, well, we can't give you the exact numbers, but we can tell you we are shorthanded at this time, and here's why we're shorthanded with retention and also recruitment, and we're trying to get 4,000 cops. We are shorthanded at this point. And that would correlate to this question about the 911. But instead, Lincoln Ressler didn't even call them out on it. Now, she's making it work to her advantage. When it's a safety issue, they can't give the manpower. But when it's an issue about the 911 responses, now she refers to the manpower. So again, this is complete magic. They don't call her out on all these responses. It's a big magic show, and the smoke is right in their faces. And this should be alarming and very concerning because, John, I think you said it earlier, if I'm correct. And that's one thing I learned also, being a special ops lieutenant and going to different community affairs, community events or community meetings. People don't care about the anti-crime guys running around, the public safety guys. They do. It's important to them. But what's important to them is the patrol cops. Who's responds to those 911 calls? How fast they can respond? How many cops are going to be there to help them? Are they going to get the job done? That's what they want to know. People want to know. They just want the cops there as soon as possible. That's why a lot of people make fake gun calls or put a lot of exacerbate or embellish some of their calls because they want the cops there quicker. That's what's important to them. Get the cops there as fast as possible. So 911 responses are a major issue, but here we just see complete lies and deflection. With that being said, I just want to say we're 2 hours and 47 minutes into it. I want to thank you for the engagement today. I think the engagement's off the hook. It's a great show. I don't think I'm going to say this is saying it might sound a little bit, put us on a pedestal a little bit. I'm not trying to, but there's no one that discusses the city council hearings in the manner that we do. And thank you to the engagement we're getting from our friends and listeners. We appreciate it. It's important to discuss these things. And ultimately, they spend all these hours, all this money, and it goes nowhere. So it's pretty much useless. So, again, 2 hours and 47 minutes into it. Like, share, and subscribe. John, I'm sure you want to respond to this one, and then we'll get to the coffee and donuts.
Yeah, no, look, I think the whole thing was theater. I think that, when we play the other agency heads speaking, you're going to see that they do not accept the same responses that Tish gave them on a lot of different things. The fact of the matter is that I hate to even say this, but the fact of the matter is this, like, all I'm going to say is if you want to be able to know how many cops are in a precinct, that is already publicly accessible data that's out there. I'm not going to let people know how to do it, but it's already publicly given data. So if that in fact is true, Jessica, why is it available online? Because I could give you all the numbers right now. I could go on one website in particular and pull down every precinct, how many cops are in there. No for the bad. Now, I'm not going to know who's modified, and I'm not going to know who's on vacation. I'm not going to know who's out sick, and I'm not going to know, but I'm going to know who's assigned that. So that's a complete fabrication of the fact. Let's get to the coffee and donuts.
Yeah. I just want to say, when you go to Coffee Donuts, I mean, that's a great point. If they really cared about the safety issues, they would address it with CCRB, because with CCRB, it's scary. Not only can you get the roster, but you can get everyone's name and all some legitimate, pertinent information. Really scary, and they don't combat that at all.
Oh, but that's crazy. That's publicly available. That's nuts, Eric. So it sounds like they perjured themselves at the city council hearing. Oh, wow, that's weird. I thought they couldn't give that information out. I thought I heard. Oh, wow, that's weird. Oh,
sure did, brother.
Right. I guess that swear-in oath really doesn't mean anything. That's just theater too, you know.
Apparently, yeah.
You know, it's like the Chiefs when they promised to uphold the Constitution. Same thing.
Spot on, brother.
Wait, slight correction of what I said. It was Councilwoman Linda Lee, right? And
who's that? Who's that? The fake chair of that meeting? Because the real chair was sitting on the NYPD side.
Yeah, true. Right.
Yeah. I'll give you more time.
Don't worry. We'll give you more time.
I will give her credit for seeming to know about the budget, but you know, again, the problem is there's no follow up, and they just accept the slop that's been fed to them by.
All right, let's go. Come on, because we're running out of time here, people.
Okay, you got it, brother.
All right. Catch 22. Staten guy 321. Catch 22. Make cops' job impossible. Reward crime. Make cop quit or get in trouble at all times. But we want to have a safe, secure festivals and magic. It's children throwing a tantrum at reality. It's theater, bro. Yeah. Public. Well, I wanted to name it Public Safety Theater this show, but it was we used theater last time, but this is all it is.
We could have said Public Safety Magic.
Yeah. Mon Samurai says, great show today, guys. Really appreciate what you guys do and the sacrifices you guys make for us to get the news out. It's time away from family, work, and daily activities that you may have. This was show was 3 days in the making. We couldn't even get through all of it. Brother. I think I'm like 27 hours in. I was like, last night I gave up. I was like, I'm done. I can't clip anything out more. My visual zone, you beat. You were not reading that one. You know, stop being a hater. Mon and Samurai, she's talking about Kinsella to go to the John Halfling McCarry School of Step Ladders, Public Speaking, and medium uniform shirts for success. John will teach you to stand tall, climb curves, and dress for success.
Who is that from? Mon and Samurai? Yo, thank you for the coffee donuts. That is hilarious. Oh my god.
If you're calling 911 expecting someone who can help you immediately, not sitting on the phone explaining it for an hour, be heard. You're getting murdered in your living room. Do you need NYPD? What the F? Dude, so you know who's not being heard? The people that are calling be heard. Nobody's hearing it. Be heard's actually not hearing anybody. So that's my visual zone. This is for Marlon. He says, Marlon thinks council members know what's going on. Maybe 10 or 15 at 51. I would say significantly less than that. Marlon, who is Marlon kidding? They're all bozos. Got anything for him, Marlon?
Well, I do think a lot of them know what's going on more than he thinks. They just, again, it's kayfabe. You know?
Well, I mean, we're talking about reality. I'm not talking about the political. Like, they're all in tuned on the political agenda. I mean, that I'll say is much higher. But the reality of the world and what they're doing, what they're actually partaking in, I would say very few.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I think most of these city council members are just complete idiots. I don't think any of them had real fucking jobs. Other than, like, you know, we spoke to Bob Holden. Here's someone who's impressive, who had a real career his whole life, and then went over to city council. But Lincoln Wrestler, some of these guys, they never had real jobs. I'm sorry.
Nepo babies.
Yeah, exactly.
Wrestler, Ochi, or Caban. Well, actually, Caban was a lawyer, but, you know, there are a couple others. The young DSA guys are like all Nepo babies, you know?
Listen, I never met Lincoln Wrestler in person, but I'm sure if I looked at the palm of his hand, I'm sure it's pretty much baby soft, baby skin. I guarantee that guy has never had a real hard day's work in his life. None of those people have worked.
It's
not a real job.
Butter soft, like Tariq Shepard, tender hands. Butter soft.
Tender hands.
You know, lotioned up. Pio Affronti, present for duty. Thank you all. Another great week. I personally can express my appreciation, even in retirement. It's such a comfort. Nolan says he's standing by, and Stephen S., good friend, says you guys are the best. Truly a public service. Appreciate everyone. look, we're gonna head out. We're trying to keep the show down to 3 hours at this point. Just too much stuff going on with family, especially in the summer. My kids are home. All our kids are around, so we gotta get out there, be with family too. But hope you guys tune in on Monday. We'll go more into these hearings because there's a lot of them. They even have the conflict between FDNY and now Health and Hospitals saying that they're actually running Be Heard. I mean, it's a shit show, honestly. 7.5 hours. We got 2 more days of hearings. It's crazy. We'll talk more about it on Monday. I'll end the show before we run out of here. I'm going to end it and it's just going to end on a Tiffany Caban clip. Just know she asked for a 3rd round after her insanity because it's just funny to hear. And Linda Lee's like, okay, I'll give you a 3rd round, and then ends the hearing and never gives it. So it's just hysterical. So yeah, what do you guys got before we run?
Go ahead, Marlon. Okay.
No, I was just gonna say, but we didn't even get to impact, which is what is back. If you listen to what Tish said, right?
18 months, right?
Yeah. Impact. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your viewership, and we appreciate you spending time with us. And have a great weekend, and stay safe and stay alert. See you next week.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to our friends and listeners. Honestly, I say it all the time, but I really mean it. You guys were a huge part of the show, the engagement, and Mana-san, Rai, shout out to you, man. We spent a lot of time on this, doing these shows, and I enjoy it. And Marlon makes a lot of clips, and John does a lot of stuff behind the scenes. The work that goes into this, it's pretty extensive, and we're happy to do it. I really enjoy doing these shows, and I enjoy the engagement, and it's nice when cops call you, and I get calls all the time, like, hey, you just want to have conversations to vent because they have nowhere to turn anymore. The unions are useless at this point. There's no support. And a lot of times they call us. They call me. They call John. They call Marlon. And we're happy to do it, So, if you want to reach out to us, if there's any way we could help or just have a conversation to vent to someone that actually can tell you the truth because we're not on the job anymore and tell you what, really how you feel and how to help you. So we'll just vent. So with that being said, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Like, share, and subscribe. Finest Unfiltered. We're at 250,000. We are going to make it to that 1 million, and we need to do it with you. So thank you, everyone. Let's keep growing. Let's grow together. Our friends and listeners, you can say, hey, I was a friend of the network when these guys had 5 subscribers, and now you're with us at 250,000 subscribers. So we appreciate it. And if you just got on board now with us, let's grow together. Let's build. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Amon and Samurai says, I won't say we, but I certainly appreciate the hard work you guys do. Like, subscribe, and join the chat. Yeah, wherever you guys are watching, listening, please do us that favor. Hit that like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you're on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review, 5-star review. Give us a comment. Help move us up in the algorithm. Help us help you. We appreciate it. Marlon, you got anything before we get out of here?
No, I don't. I'm done. Have a great weekend, guys. I'll see you on Monday.
All right, everybody. Let's go Knicks, baby.
That's right. New York, baby.
Before my questions, I just want to address a couple things. The woman who gave birth in cuffs in the courthouse in Brooklyn, and I'm going to say that because the cuffs were taken off when the baby was crowning. And any mother will tell you that labor and birth is much more and much longer than those final few moments of when your baby crowns and is actually born. So I would suggest that whoever's giving y'all that line, whoever's working on the PR spin, rethink that one, because that is a terrible answer. I'm emotional, just like I can't believe that was the answer that was given. I did want to correct the record. I know that there was it was testified to that the jail population on Rikers consisted of everybody being there on felonies. I just want to say that as of yesterday, the population was 6,652 people, 5,652 of which are pretrial, meaning that they are not proven guilty of anything and they are simply there because they cannot afford their bail. 397 of them are there on misdemeanors. 154 of them are there on technical holds. 7 are there on violations, not crimes. Those are not felonies. So I think that's important to have on the record.
Just if I can
well, no, that's not a question. I'm stating that for the record. I'm going to ask my question now. So I also wanted to follow up on my first round of questioning around sort of the summonses and the arrests. it was stated that there were three categories, right? The no ID, which was 6% of those processed arrests. And then the other two categories were if they had open warrants.
I didn't want to be bold any longer.
If you're daydreaming about having more hair, this is it. This is the way to get there.
I chose Restore because by far,
whoever's giving y'all that line, whoever's working on the PR spin, question now. So I also wanted to follow up on my first round of questioning around sort of the summonses and the arrests. It was stated that there were three categories, right? The no ID, which was 6% of those processed arrests. And then the other two categories were if they had open warrants. And then the third category was if they were potentially going to be charged with a higher offense. So I wanted to hone in on those second and third categories. That second one, if they had open warrants, how much of the time were those open warrants for other summonses or low-level offenses?
I don't have that data with me, but if someone is wanted on an open warrant, it is our responsibility to turn them on it.
Well, okay, so I'm going to say that under the law, under CPL 150-20, actually, it says that a DAT is discretionary where there is an open warrant. It's actually the patrol guide, not the law, that suggests it's mandatory to take people through a custodial arrest. In fact, under the law, it would have to be a felony open warrant to make custodial appearance mandatory. So that's why I want to know what the percentage of non-ID arrests include felony charges.
Council member, just one point on that. I think it's important. Of course, you're right about 150-20, but here's the thing. If we have someone who we encounter, we know the person has an open warrant, and we just let that person go, we do not return them on that warrant, and that person then goes and commits another crime, hurts somebody, after we let the person go on an open warrant, right? We are responsible for what happened. It is a massive liability for the department and for the city. We cannot do that.
I will tell you that in my experience as a public defender representing people in court, oftentimes when somebody came through, when they got a summons for sleeping on the subway, for an open container, their open warrant was overwhelmingly usually for another sleeping on the subway or an open container, not that they were some crazy threat to our safety. So I think that context is important when people are trying to understand actually what it means when somebody has a warrant, actually what it means when we're spending millions of dollars of resources to police people over these issues while not increasing safety, but exacerbating existing problems. So I want to go into that third area of the higher offenses that may be charged. So let's say somebody is under CPL 150-20 eligible for that an appearance ticket or a desk appearance ticket, and of those higher offenses that you're using the discretion to process, how many of those are for still under the category of low-level offense, like for example, a theft of service? So like how many, or the percentage of those that you're tracking in that third category are actually other low-level offenses?
We will get you that information.
Okay. Can I ask a few more questions?
Can we go to round 3? Is that okay?
What's up?
Okay. I promise, Tiffany, I'm sorry. I'll come back to you.
What's up?
I'm going to come back to you.
I can't hear you.
I'm going to come back.
Okay, great. Thank you. As long as you promise to come back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Wong, followed by Council.
This is going on a long time. I'm gonna excuse the executive staff, and the people testifying will stay, but we have a lot going on this summer, and I just can't have them staying here all afternoon.
Sure.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?